All right, welcome in everybody to the VWSC 1.2 Hours of Sebring. And as you can see, it is a wet track, and this is going to make things very, very interesting. I was scoping out things as they were going down in the practice session, which was ending in the rain at night. And let's just say it was dicey. So we're watching here Cameron Barker. It is the first 10 minutes of qualifying will be, of course, the GT cars, and then the second 10 minutes of qualifying will be the Hypercars. Now, with the wet track, we obviously are relegated to only using the wet tires. There will be no slick weather running, at least for the time being, if the weather stays the way it has been or it is right now. What this means is everybody has a wet weather compound. There's no inter or wet kind of conversation to be had. It is just a wet weather compound, so everybody will be using solely that compound, at least for the start of the race. And the rain has come and gone a little bit. I don't think it's actually raining right now, but as you can see, the track is completely soaked. So it's damage already done, and these guys will be running on the wet weather tires. A drying line will start to form over the course of the qualifying session, and we'll see. But if it rains again, all that sort of effort to make the dry line will go away. So I'm True Uyan. I will be joined by Jake Sanson, our actual leading man in the commentary booth. However, he is having some technical issues on his end right now. So for the moment, I will kick us off in qualifying, and we'll hope to have Jake Sanson in with us very, very soon. A little bit of traffic going on with John Mayer as they argue for position with the Mustang, the conceptual Mustang, not a real car, that does actually race in GT. Also, the replay machine tries to go around the outside in the sweeper. This is an issue. It's quite a large track, but nevertheless, they will fight for position, and gaps and differences in pace will be exponentially larger when the track is wet, for the very same reasons as they are when it's dry. It's just expanded to higher levels of car control needed and stability. Obviously, everybody's running a bit slower, but if you're off the pace when it's dry, you will find yourself very off the pace when it's wet, just because of the stability needed with the car, throttle control, all these kind of aspects that play into it to keep the car on the road. So as we start to see some times starting to form, we'll switch the board to just the GTs, the GT Pros, of which we only have, is that right? There's only 4 GT Pros? It is, and Ahmed Abdallah actually is in the GT Pro instead of his normal Hypercar. On the GT-AM side, we have, there we go, 17 GT-AM cars. So quite a big field. The GT-AM field, quite competitive on a championship standing standpoint, as well as the 2 drivers who have won the first 2 races are neck and neck. They've been first, second, first in the results. So GT-AM hotly contested between Boyce and Miller, I believe. So we'll take a look at championship standings later on. But for now, Matt Boyce sets the pace in GT-AM. George Angelidis sets the pace in GT Pro, running 207s and 208s for the GT field. Running at Barry DiMazzo, just leaving the lane. You can see the sheen on the track all the way down the home stretch. Now you can see that rubbered in line / drying line. It is visible, but nowhere near as much so as they would have. Oh, as DiMazzo gets a little bit squirrely coming out of the lane. That'll relegate him back to the pits. That was a short attempt. Tom Lane. I do believe... I apologize. I think I said Miller earlier. Tom Lane, the one fighting for the GT-AM championship with a win to his name. He rounds currently in second. Purple Sector 1, a very slow Sector 2, however, compared to Boyce in the lead. As he goes around Sunset. Whoa, a little bit wide and squirrely. Tank slapping his way across the line does not improve. So Boyce maintains the lead in the GT AMS. If we switch over to GT Pro, George Angelidis has just set the best time again, as he's very much contested in traffic on a new outlap for George Angelidis. Currently setting the pace in GT overall, not just in GT Pro. 2/10 over Boyce in the GT AM. It's not the cleanest track around, is it? It's quite busy as everybody kicks the tail out coming out of the hairpin. Finding some clean track is usually what you're trying to do at this point. At this, in this juncture though, at a wet Sebring qualifying, they might just be trying to keep it on the track. As a BMW gets tagged by a fellow BMW in behind George Angelidis. He's obviously unimpeded by that, but everybody's sort of checked up here trying to get one last run in qualifying. They have 1 minute and 8 seconds in GT qualifying. See if we can take a look at what happened down there. It's Craig Dans. This is a replay. Oh, he just gets on the grass. Yeah, that'll do it. Checking something else in his Bentley. Ahmed Abdallah is just in the pits. Sorry, I'm not sure why that bumper started playing again. Ahmed Abdallah now rejoins and gets in. Let's see if we can take a look at what happened to the GT that speared off into the wall. The answer is going to be no, we can't. So first draft of the replay machine being done by hand, admittedly didn't go well. I couldn't find it. That's fine. It'll be more clear in the race as issues arise to find those. We'll obviously be running in the order we are on track at the moment. The timing board obviously doesn't represent where they physically are on track in terms of being next to each other, so it was a little tough. Is that a Gilmore Girls logo on the side of Steve Carman's? Am I seeing that right? Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, I saw the big G. I thought that was a Gilmore Girls logo. Never mind, we'll move on. In my defense, there are some pretty funny team names and liveries out. I saw the big swooping G. Let's ignore the fact that I know that that big swooping G is from Gilmore Girls. As Steve Carman makes his way through. He's down on all counts in terms of the target time, however, he is currently going for 10th overall, and his competitors ahead of him are just a few tenths ahead of him, and they're in the garage. So Carman does have an opportunity here as he goes towards the final bend to make his stake. The sheen on the track is sort of hard to miss. I really like the updated reflections that we have nowadays in rFactor 2 as well, and he does bail out of the lap, unfortunately. George Angelidis did get his flyer that he was struggling so hard to make sure he could obtain, and he's gone purple in both sectors, so not only will he maintain an advantage of 0.004 over Jamie Zalecki in the GTM category, George Angelidis will probably stamp his authority even more so on the GT field as a whole. Currently at a 2:07.4, which is his own target time, and a 2:06.5. Absolutely stomps the GT field. George Angelidis in the rain, in the Acura, makes his claim. Now then, we're switching over towards our little friends in the Hypercars. Unfortunately, we grab Ben Borman right as he spins in Sunset. Miguel Ramos also in a fellow Valkyrie on his outlap. Drying line, obviously, you can see starting to form, but no one is going to be braving slicks quite yet. We're going to need a lot more defined of a dry line, and we're going to need quite a bit of confidence is one way to say it, to be honest, to make that claim. We'll stick with Miguel Ramos for the moment as he starts to make his claim for the Hypercar Pro pole position. Ben Borman, Miguel Ramos, John Uyan, Wayne Hutchinson, Norm Graff, Tom Aitken. The normal players at the top, they were at the top in practice. However, times did get a little bit wonky as the rain started to fall. Miguel Ramos definitely pushing for everything that he's got on the Sunset Bend. That's an interesting shot, isn't it? Under the grill of Miguel Ramos' car. Now, the curbs are tricky at the best of times around here because they're high curbs. They're not quite rumble strips, especially for some of these tighter corners. However, doubly so in rain, obviously, because if you only got 2 tires on the track, while that might be okay for skirting the line in dry running, in the wet, you really want all 4 tires on the ground, don't you? Track limits exceptions are at the hairpin with that wider rumble strip at the hairpin, so the drivers, like Miguel Ramos was doing, can use that as an advantage as Hall sets the pace at a 1:55.6 for the Hypercars. Whitehead 1.1 seconds behind. Walter de Bruin sets the pace at a 1:55.1, and Hall now 4/10 behind the pace set by Walter de Bruin. Miguel Ramos does go purple in Sector 1, though. And green in Sector 2, obviously green because it's his first flyer as far as we're aware. Ross Smith 4 seconds down on the pace in the GT AM. Walter de Bruin sets our pace. I have confidence here to stick with Miguel Ramos. I feel like good things are going to happen on this lap. We have a Hypercar slow on the side. The Lamborghini trying to tuck back in. The Hypercar, the Bolide, obviously it's a Hypercar. The Bolide, I meant to say, tucks back in. Is that John Uyan or Daniel Kirby? And unfortunately, it's right in front of Miguel Ramos as he tries to make his stake for pole position. 1:56.7 doesn't quite do it, and he will bail at that point. Give a little love tap to the wall on his way out. So, Walter de Bruin sets the pace. He's even 5/10 up on that pace in his Zonda. Not Zonda, I keep doing that. Pagani Imola, not a Pagani Zonda. However, matches or 1/10 down on his own target in Sector 2. Pushing that Pagani in the rain, sliding it out wide onto the final stretch. Four minutes left in qualifying. Walter de Bruin, round Sunset, with a target time of his own. Brian Hall 4/10 behind, and Walter de Bruin 54.8. Clearly setting the pace, a few extra tenths on top of it. And as I look down, we do have some personal bests being set. For example, Jerry Chen on some personal bests, however, compared to the target time set by Walter de Bruin, quite a tough mark to beat. As Jerry Chen rounds the final, or penultimate corner onto the home stretch. Miguel Ramos there, just leaving the shot, rounding Sunset. Bouncing his way through Sunset. It is ridiculously bouncy, as I thought he was actually going to lose it there. Jerry Chen, he keeps it on the road. He still was setting his personal best, but he does not improve as he comes across the line. So, De Bruin, Hall, Chen. Chen is third, despite being in the Hypercar AM category, so a fantastic effort from Jerry Chen. He currently leads over this man, Jason Whitehead. Also in the Storm Rider Racing Valkyrie. With Ramos less than a tenth of a second behind. And then a few tenths back to our championship leader, Uyan with Jill Lalonde behind him. Definitely a competitive qualifying and a tricky qualifying. As we see, it gets a little bit wide. Through the sweepers. Dare he use all the road? He almost does. Whitehead onto the final straight. He did have a personal best first sector. But a few tenths down in sector 2. So, getting onto the back straight was a little bit hairy. See what Whitehead can do as a net time in sector 3. He does not improve. I would have actually assumed that our all-wheel drive cars would have been a bit more competitive in the rain. The likes of Ernest Bonaldo and John Uyan. As Jerry Chen gets out of the way of John Uyan coming onto the back straight. He's on a outlap now, so he will have one legitimate lap. I honestly would have assumed that with the stability of the all-wheel drive in the rain, that it would have benefited the Bugattis a lot more. But as we can see, I guess the other aspect is the Bugattis obviously have the massive understeer that they have to deal with. So mixed in with the rain, probably not working in their favor.
Well, you held the fort down very well there, my friend. Good to be back with you in the closing minute of qualifying. It's
Jake Sanson!
Pretty
He's
wet
back.
out there, I tell you. It's pretty wet out there, I can tell you. What a difference a week makes, eh? This is a very difficult circuit of Sebring compared to what we're used to last week. Wood to the Bruin, looking good to hold on to things. 7/10 of a second ahead of Hall, with Chen still in the battle. Apologies if I sound like I've got a frog in the throat. I probably have. John Uyan, 2.2 seconds adrift. It looks really difficult to find the grip and put it down, but Bugatti Bolide is still a very strong car around this circuit. And the CMS Pro Bugatti Bolide is doing its best to try and get around the course with not too many difficulties. Out of Cunningham, up the left flick, and on the run to Jean de Bien on the far side of the circuit. The checkered flag is out, and Wouter de Bruin looks like he may have this, although Hall and Chen are still pushing hard, as is John Uyan. How close was that to throwing it away?
He had a tire on the grass. Oh, and he locks up going into the sweepers. That's that run done.
Yeah, it was looking very good up until that point, sadly, but this lap is pretty much bailed. Yep, he's come straight off the road there. And the only other driver really on a fast lap at the moment appears to be Wouter de Bruin, who is having a very sensible run of it out in front, but he's not really gaining in terms of the time he's already had set. But Brian Hall in the Lamborghini running very well in a solid second position at the moment in front of Jerry Chen in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini. So all going very well for the Pagani Imola of Wouter de Bruin. It seems as though this car really suits these conditions. And he's found almost a second compared to anybody else. That's how tricky Sebring is in the wet conditions, Troy. It really is tricky to get the power down.
Tricky enough in the dry with how bumpy the track is, and I got some first-hand experience with that prepping for the NARS race, which unfortunately was canceled. But it is almost nauseating how bumpy it is at these hypercars, and I can't imagine how it feels in the wet on top of that.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm really struggling with my timing screen as well. I'm afraid I'm just going to have to go with what I can see on screen by the look of it, which obviously makes things a little more interesting. But hey, you've got used to my mistakes by now. Wouter de Bruin, 7/10 of a second clear of Hall and Chen, and I don't really see either driver making a big impact. In fact, Wouter de Bruin has bailed out of the run to the final corner. And I think he's figured out what everybody else has, as Ben Borman is going to try and break into the top 10 with his final flying lap. 11th, so close in the Storm Rider Valkyrie. Has to cope with 11th place in the end then. Just couldn't quite get on top of Bonaldo and Graf. But the Storm Rider Aston Martin Valkyrie gets a 154.826, and that will have to do. I think that's pretty much all she wrote, and that sends us into the closing sequence. Wood de Bruin, a fabulous performance in the Pagani Imola to get pole position here, and we'll run through it. Brian Hall in second from Jerry Chen in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini, Jason Whitehead in the Storm Rider Aston Martin, and Mikel Ramos in his Valkyrie. John Uyan in the Bugatti Bolide, and then Gilles Lalonde, Wayne Hutchison in the Mercedes, Ernest Benaldo, and Norm Graff in the Ferrari FXXK Evo. That's the top 10. Behind them, Ben Bowman just missing out. Eric Moyne in the Acura Mistral Lamborghini is 12 from Ross Smith, and Ali Bijani doing a great job in the old and slow Ferrari. Brad Nielsen Vestergaard is in 15th in the Glickenhaus from Tom Aiken. Guillermo Benchka, George Angelidis really struggling in the HPD Acura on this occasion. Jamie Zalechki is in front of AJ Wren in the Grazie Ragazzi Ferrari. Outside the top 20, still great competitors. Matt Boyce in the Trash Panda Lamborghini. Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Mustang. Cameron Barker. And then Peter Mayer from Craig Dans in the Reptile Bentley. And John Meyer in the HPD Acura. Eugene Mazur. Luca Viani in his Ferrari. Then Steve Carman in the Image Grill BMW. And Stephen Miller rounding out the top 30 in his McLaren. And finishing it up, we have Mike Boyce and Barry Damaso. Roland Haganars in the Corvette along with Filippo Marazzi. Dan Minguez and James Budas from Tony Boynton, who did not get a fast lap time in, but at least it's better than Ed Jones and Ahmed Abdallah. They didn't get a time in at all, but Ahmed Abdallah is used to flying through from the back of the grid, so I have a feeling he's going to do exactly the same again. 39 cars are going to be out there for this Sebring 1.2 hours in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 2022 running. And how about that pace? It looks as though only two drivers, Troy, really gone on top of things. Wood de Bruin and Brian Hall, and there's nearly a second between those two.
It's actually quite impressive, De Bruyn's time, when you factor in that we had the Valkyries and the Bolides really struggling. The Lamborghinis, though, looking strong with second and third. And then that dark horse of the Pagani Imola doesn't only win with an upset last time out over John Uyan, he takes pole in Sebring. De Bruyn's on a roll right now.
I have a feeling that, he's one of, I think, only two drivers all season that has been in a Pagani Imola. And I think he might be the one that's really called it right, because this could be a masterstroke of a decision from Wood de Bruin. Here is the circuit, the famous Sebring Raceway, and it is a fabulous race circuit. So many bumps and so many difficult race corners on the run. From that first sector, as you work your way through the first 5 turns, all the way up to Big Bend, where you really start to lean on it with not a lot of runoff to play with, into the hairpin, where we saw a lot of drivers in the Group C race last week really struggle to keep it on the road. Then through the Fangio S's and up to Cunningham. Once you come out of Collier, you're on the run to Tower, and you've really got to be very careful where you place the car. Then the little kink up through Bishop onto Jean de Bien at turn 15, and then on the way to Le Mans. And then you get the Ullman Straight, very, very tricky, before you get to Sunset Bend, a really very technical and very tricky final corner. We saw a few moments and some good overtakes last week in the Group C. But the 1.2 race is going to be very exciting again in the 2022 running. Here's what you've got over the course of the next few weeks. Today is the 1.2 hours of Sebring in the VWSC, and then you're going to take a nice breather and relax until we get to April, when the 1 hour of Long Beach will be the next event. Then you'll get the legendary 230 kilometers of Suzuka in the 1991 Brigade for Group C. And then the 1 hour of Spa, 4 days before I turn the ripe old age of 21 again. Yes, I said 21 again. That's all you need to know. But yeah, the VWSC 1 hour of Spa on April the 23rd. I can't wait for that one. It's going to be an absolutely delightful race. Now, here are the Hypercar Championship points upcoming into this race. Only 7 points advantage for John Uyan in this one, ahead of Daniel Kirby. Wood de Bruin making a big claim for the championship lead with that pole position in Sebring. 12 points adrift of John Uyan, but that could swing if things go his way. And of course, Dan Kirby and Wood de Bruin have a win apiece. Miguel Ramos in 4th position in front of Ben Borman. Both drivers with a chance to crack the top 3 if things go their way here at Sebring. The Hypercar top 5 very close. In the AM category, Eric Moyne has been incredibly consistent over the 2 races. He has a win and another podium finish to his name, where things are very close for second. Ross Smith, Tom Aiken, Jerry Chen, and Wayne Hutchison throw a blanket over them and cover them by 14 points, because they are all in the hunt. Jerry Chen, of course, after a solid race victory and a very difficult second encounter, still trying to fight his way back into the top 2. In GT, the top 5 is still pretty tight. Brandon Gant, with his victory over George Angelidis, has a 7-point advantage. Cameron Sansano's done a good job to put himself just 8 points adrift of the lead. But that win from Sean Jacobs keeps him in the hunt. He's on 26 points, a full 16 back from the Gant leader. And James Walker is in or thereabouts in the GT top 5. In the AM category, it's mighty close. A win apiece for Matt Boyce and Tom Lane means it's still very early days for those two. 3 points apiece. And then you've got Mike Boyce, Peter Mayer, and Eugene Mazur, all covered by 3 points as well. It's still very early days in the championship standings. Always worth having a look at after the second race. But I tell you what, it's mighty close across all 4 categories. And there's only really one clear leader across the categories. Of course, we have to talk about tyres again here, Troy. Hypercars, well, you've only got one choice, slick or wet. And then the GTs, we're going to see that difference in compound rear its head again.
And obviously we're going to have everybody sort of start on the wets, given how the track is. It doesn't dry between rFactor 2 sessions, so it's going to stay wet and start wet. It will be quite interesting, and this is one of the reasons why we go single file with an orange zone up through turn 6 or 7, is to just make sure that we have a 1.2 hour race. It's already difficult with it being wet and transitioning from day to night, simulating that 12-hour time. We have 2x tire wear, 2x fuel wear. On top of that, having a dual file restart will just be a little bit chaotic. We want to make sure people can get through that first lap, that all-important first lap, where, as you've said a few times this season already, you can't win it, but you can lose it.
Absolutely, and esports is very different from the real-world thing as well. The race can be completely spoiled if you make your way to the first corner with everybody en masse, and you'll get a lot higher chances of huge pile-ups into turn 1 in esports, of course, than you will in the real world. So we don't want to ruin the quality of the Champions Motorsport racing here at Sebring, so it's much better to go single file. But I promise you that even though we're going to go single file on the start, you won't be short of action. Last week was very revealing indeed at Sebring. In the Group C race, we had at least 4 leaders drop the ball during their fight for the victory, Troy. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that last race out was quite crazy. I went back and watched it as well after the broadcast, and it was just crazy how many people...
And that was in the dry as well.
Exactly. Exactly. In the dry. It's just a factor of those cars obviously being difficult to drive, as we have a few minutes left of warm-up here. Those cars being obviously quite difficult to drive. You need to nurse them a little bit, them being a little looser around the edges than obviously our modern, hypothetical, theoretical hypercars that we have here in the 22s. But these guys, we're going to have to contend with the bumps and the high curves already. Now we're going to have to, and the multi-class, and now we're going to have to contend with rain as well. I'm like giddy for the start of this race.
I think this could be even crazier than last week. There's very much a good chance of it. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. But definitely we're in for an exciting battle in front of us here as we prepare for more great action in the Champion Motorsports VWSC 2022. 1.2 hours of Sebring. It'll definitely be plenty of drama and suspense. And of course, this circuit changes completely in terms of feel when the rain comes out, Troy. It's difficult enough in the bone dry conditions when the bumps are throwing the weight of the car to and from the apexes. But in the rain, it's completely unpredictable what the car is going to do each lap.
I had a hard enough time in corners like Cunningham getting the bolides stopped and stuff, just because it's so bumpy into the braking zones. It's so easy to lock up. I actually reduced the max pedal force in the setup to make sure that I could still hit the brakes, but the car wouldn't go over a certain brake percentage threshold, just to help me not lock up into these braking zones. You add on top of that the rain and the traffic and people on differing paces, like we kind of see here with George Angelidis being the pace setter of the GT field, contending with a Mustang through the sweepers. And we're going to have, obviously, the multi-class factor to add on top of everything. In, what were the deltas? About 10 seconds, 12 seconds delta between GTs and the Hypercars. So it's not going to be very long. What is that? 6, 7 laps as George Angelidis kicks the tail out through sunset. 6, 7 laps and we might have Hypercars on the back of GT. as we go here and we're doing our customary pit box check to make sure nobody's sharing a pit box with another competitor, because it's nice to find that out during the warm-up, not during the event. Now, most people did have to go around another lap because, sort of similar to Daytona, you start in the paddock area. You don't start in the pit lane. So you have to drive out through the paddock area into the front of the lane and then do a full lap before you can get back, back around to actually get into the lane proper and do your pit box check, which is different from some circuits where you literally just start in your pit box when you spawn into the track. So there are some differences here. As you can see, the Ferrari in the top left of the screen and a bolide just went by. You start back there on the other side of the wall in the paddock area and you have to drive out, it makes it kind of more immersive in a sense as well.
Yeah, it is kind of the way it's done in American motorsport, isn't it? Because you start out in the outer paddock and then obviously have to make your way through. So it just, as you say, completely adds to the immersion factor. So the warm-up, not particularly representative of what we're going to see in terms of lap times, but with Wouter de Bruin finding 0.7 of a second on Brian Hall in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini in qualifying, we're certainly in for a bit of an interesting show if he can keep that pace. But as we saw last week, with 4 or 5 race leaders binning it at various points through the course of the race, with everybody driving the same class of car, and with it being in the dry, in the rain, plus multi-class, plus Sebring's bumps, this race has the makings of being one of the most unpredictable esports endurance races I have ever seen. And that's definitely going to be must-see entertainment this evening. The drivers are making their way now to their positions on the starting grid in a couple of minutes' time. And with 38 cars, I believe, in the server. We thought it was going to be 39, but it will end up being 38. There's Wayne Hutchison putting himself in position there in the Mercedes AMG 1. Should be very exciting to see these cars. Of course, the combination of Hypercar and GT, blending the future aspirations of what we hope is going to look like for the World Endurance Championship in years to come, and certainly with a few cars that you would never normally see in the world of real racing. That's the beauty of esports. We can suspend the reality of disbelief and give people what they want. But now the 38 cars are going to line up in position. The combination of Hypercars and GTs. But as you mentioned, Troy, the tyre compounds are never really going to be a factor in this because it's only one choice. Wet tyres for the moment. And looking at the way the weather is likely to play out, it could be that way for the entirety of the 1.2 Hours of Sebring. But of course, it's simulated accelerated time. So we will definitely get to see some good battles over the course of racing. But all the drivers are there in position. As the green flag flies, we'll walk you through the grid once again, which will come up on your screen, the graphics, to tell you through who is going to be starting where once more around the circuit. Wouter de Bruin and Brian Hall will be on the front row of the grid, then Jerry Chen in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini and Jason Whitehead in the Storm Rider Valkyrie. Mikel Ramos in his Aston Martin and John Huyan in the CMS Pro Bugatti Bolide. Gilles Lalonde in the Valkyrie, Wayne Hutchison in the Mercedes AMG 1, Ernesto Bernaldo in the Bugatti Bolide, and Norm Graf in the Ferrari FXXK Evo. Behind them, Ben Borman will be alongside Eric Moyne, Aston Martin versus Lambo, then Ross Smith and Ali Bijani. Welcome to the championship in the old and slow Ferrari. Then Brad Nielsen-Vestergaard in the Glickenhaus and Tom Aiken in the shared Lamborghini. Guillermo Benchigui in the Storm Rider Noon Aston Martin. George Angelidis in the HPD Acura. Then Jamie Zulechki in the Aston Martin Vantage, the first of the GT cars battling away there at the front then. And AJ Wren in the Grazie e Ragazzi Ferrari. Then it is Matt Boyce and Tom Lane, Hurricane versus Mustang, Cameron Barker in the M6 GD3, Peter Mayer in his Porsche, Craig Dans in the Reptile Bentley Continental, John Mayer in the HPD Acura from Eugene Mazur in the Pazuzu Porsche, Luca Viani, Steve Carman, and Stephen Miller. Behind them, there are still going to be a fair few drivers charging through. Mike Boyce and Barry DeMarzo from Roland Haganars and Filippo Marazzi in the Ferrari, Dan Minguez in the DMZOV Corvette, James Boders in the Red Weasel Porsche, Tony Boynton in the Coastal Coots Mustang, from Ed Jones in the McLaren, and Ahmed Abdallah in the Audi R8. Don't forget, he started from the back of the grid in the Daytona 2.4 earlier in the season in Group C and stormed his way to third. He won't quite get to third overall because he's in the GT category in the Audi R8, but certainly in the GT class, Troy, he's got a great chance.
Absolutely, and there's the greens on the left side of your screen there. Those are the GT cars where there's only 4 GT Pros, and there's something like 17 GT AMs. So don't know why we had such a big difference there this time out, but the GT AMs is certainly going to be an action-packed event, with the GT Pros maybe being a little bit spaced out as we get through the course. However, as we know, everybody dices it up with their similar hardware. So if we switch to the board as we're rounding onto the final board, we have De Bruyne, Chen, Angelides, and Zalecki being the class leaders. But we're going to stay on mixed probably, as we have everybody sort of intermixed together, but did want to give that a little bit. And look at all the cars there. And we did see at the very last bit there of warm-up, a few cars side by side in the lane, and they will know now that they're sharing pit boxes, which could catch someone out. Here we go.
So, single file, but De Bruyne, Hall, Chen, and Whitehead will lead us away as they come out of the final turn. And it's going to be just under an hour and 13 minutes of racing around Sebring in single file. It may seem like a dull start for you, but trust me, for us, we are in for an exciting battle as Wood de Bruyne brings them to the line. Wait for it. Now we're going to charge forward. And the Pagani Imola takes the impetus up to the first corner. Hall, Chen, Whitehead, and Ramos continue as they battle into the first corner. Nice start to the race as everybody tries to tuck their way through. As we watch Whitehead trying to get his way past Jerry Chen nice and early. A bit of a twitch from the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini. Oh, there's a few drivers already trying to get on the move. As up the inside, we're looking at the Ferrari there of Graf, trying to work his way further forward. Some good performances in the early doors then. As once again, we pick up Jason Whitehead in the Aston Martin. Trying to charge after Jerry Chen. He's having to think about it into the hairpin for the first lap. But he's going to have some pressure from Mikel Ramos already. As Mikel Ramos is just going to wait for his opportune moment, I think. You don't want to go ugly early on the first lap. And then you've got John Huyan trying to get in round the outside. He's having to think about it. So John Huyan is getting all over the hang on, Mikel Ramos is having another go at Jason Whitehead as they come up to Cunningham for the first time. In through the square right. Traction's going to be tricky, but they just about hold it through in the wet conditions here. Imagine what it's going to be like once the GTs are caught up. This is absolutely frenetic as John Ryan is already starting to threaten Mikel Ramos. The back end steps out. That was close.
That was close. He locked the rears again going into those braking zones. As we go through the sweepers, and we had some side-by-side action through the sweepers in the first part of the lap. Everything's kicked off here, and now Brian Hall going to be on the back straight. We'll see as can he draft De Bruyne down into Sunset.
Big rooster tails coming off the cars already, as Wood de Bruyne is pushing very hard indeed here to close in and pull away, but Hall is there half a second adrift. So racing is very different from qualifying, of course, as we watch Ramos, Mikel Ramos, who is closing up on his fellow Valkyrie driver, Jason Whitehead. They come through at the end of the lap. It's already been very exciting from here on out. There is De Bruyne across the line, a 1:59.917 from him. A very solid opening lap, but Brian Hall is still right there in second position as we watch Norm Graf in the Ferrari, just running there in front of Wayne Hutchison in the Mercedes. Ferrari versus Mercedes. Sounds like a familiar battle. As we've got Ramos now going along there with Lalonde. So
I think Huyan's got by Ramos.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So John Huyan has put the Bugatti Bolide past the Valkyrie Aston Martin. Let's have another look at it and see where John Huyan made the move. So we will pick it up, hopefully. This is the run from John Huyan. Did he just slingshot up the inside, or was that Ramos making the mistake and drifting wide? I think it was the latter. Yeah, look, Ramos has just gone straight on at the runoff area there. Enough for John Huyan to pick up the pieces, kept out of trouble, and there wasn't really a lot that Mikel Ramos could do about that except just let him go. So we pick it up once again. Oh, and that is that's one of the Lamborghinis going around.
Jerry Chen, I think.
Jerry Chen from third has dropped it. That is absolutely disastrous for Jerry Chen. He just got a little bit too much throttle coming off of the turn 4 right-hander, I think, and then just got spat out. So let's have another look at it. So Jerry Chen going for his opportune moment as he tries to come through, just waiting to pick it up. But Jerry Chen, a bit of a moment there. And that's going to drop him out of third position.
He fell quite a bit, sorry, apologies. It was hard to find his name, and everyone was He's down in 9th overall now, I believe.
Yes,
from
indeed.
about 4th.
Slight technical difficulties, folks. We will bring it back up onto the screen. But Jerry Chen losing positions there as he drops it in 3rd position. Very easy to do. Well, if we can't pick it up, we'll return to the race pictures anyway. So some good battles to come from the drivers. Here it is.
Yeah, sorry.
So
no, I'm sorry.
Jerry
Live.
Chen.
We're back to live.
Oh, right. Back to live pictures. So Jerry Chen is actually chasing down Wayne Hutchison at this moment in time. If we can't pick it up, we'll always come back to the race pictures. Not a problem. De Bruyn, Hall, and Uyan. But look how close Brian Hall has got now to Wouter De Bruyn in the Pagani Imola. And I tell you what, John Uyan has worked his way up to 3rd position very carefully, but they're already 7 seconds pretty much off the back of Wouter De Bruyn in the Pagani Imola. So Uyan is 3rd, Ramos in 4th, then Whitehead and Gilles Lalonde. And then in 7th place, obviously, we have Graf in the Ferrari. But it looks as though this is going to be a long race battle. Let's pick up the GTs. So this is obviously the battle between Carmen in the BMW trying to get on terms with Boyce in the Lamborghini. And the Lamborghini drifts out wide, cuts back across on Carmen. Carmen is just about given enough room to play with there. Meyer in the Porsche, just keeping himself in position just in case anything were to get picked up. But this is how easy it is to drop it. And so Boyce just keeping it nice and steady for the moment. But I do think that is 4 different manufacturers in the first 4 positions. We've got the Lamborghini, the BMW, the Porsche, and the Corvette running in the first 4 positions. Sorry, the McLaren, I should say, running in the first 4 positions in the battle we're watching on screen. It's actually Lane and Dans who are up the road in front of them in the Ford and the Bentley. So that is 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 positions. How close do you like your racing? So still the battle rages. Lane is out in front of Dans, 9/10 of a second. A good run from Boyce, but again, just as it is in Hypercar, they dropped about 7.5 seconds off the pace of the leaders. So do keep up with us on the Virtual World Sports Car Championship with CMSRacing.com. Great to be with you, Jake Sanson and Troy Uyan, talking you through the action here at the Sebring 1.2 hours on the CMS Racing Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And this is the battle we've got in the midst. There is the McLaren. That is Miller trying to shake off the other Boyce. So Mike is obviously working his magic to try and push Miller to the limit. But it is a very treacherous situation for the drivers as they go through so much standing water as they come out of Le Mans. And you can see drivers picking 2 or 3 different racing lines as they go down the Ullman Straight now. Is everybody just trying to keep themselves nicely balanced, Troy? It is not easy to go for the maneuver, but Boyce is going to try and launch it on the inside into Sunset, and surely that's going to work out.
I think so. I think he's got it nice and clean. Miller will back off a little bit and not obviously turn in on him, although he has gone very wide, has Boyce, so Miller might have the up and under here. There's so many GTs all in the mix. Miller is going to have the advantage, or the lead, going into T1, but obviously T1 is a left-hander, which will favor Boyce, and another Audi joins the party as well. That's Abdallah making his way through the field in the Audi. Will take advantage of Miller being put a little bit offline. So Boyce does win out, and now Miller is being attacked by a BMW at the same time of Steve Carman.
He's done it again, Abdallah. Who needs qualifying when you can just charge your way through the field? And he's done it again. So it's some great battles as we watch Carman and Boyce. So Carman is making some great waves here in the BMW, but now Boyce makes his move on the inside line. Is the Lamborghini going to get there into the hairpin? You've got to be so careful on the brakes. No, Carman holds him at the line. And George Angelidis is still, of course, running in front of them at the moment as the 3rd GT in the mix. Angelidis still doing a great job at the moment. De Bruyn is battling with Hall for the lead of the race overall. De Bruyn and Hall were very close to each other there. And it looked to me as though Brian Hall just briefly ran in front of the Pagani Imola. But certainly Brian Hall is keeping him honest as they go through. I think that was a little bit of a run wide potentially there from De Bruyn, and he manages to catch it. Meanwhile, in the GTs, we are watching the Porsche of Meyer. And he's got Boyce's either side. Oh, now that someone's gone off around them there. That's one of the BMWs, I think, going off. I couldn't quite make out who that was, sadly, as Abdallah is closing right up on the hunt for position. And now we look at DiMarzo as he runs behind Marazzi. So DeMarzo going well, back to the Hypercars. And this is the Aston Martin Valkyrie of Benchka. So Benchka is running behind the Mercedes-AMG 1. Whoops, that's a Porsche falling off the road. So Eric Moyne is the one car pursuing the Valkyrie at the moment. But Wayne Hutchison in the Mercedes-AMG 1 still giving it full guns blazing. And Wayne Hutchison is currently in 12th overall. Look at how hard Hall is pushing De Bruyn. These are the only two drivers able to run at this sort of pace. Although the amount of work these two have been pushing on each other, John Uyan is now just 5 seconds back. So they have lost a bit of time, these two. Ramos and Whitehead, and then Borman and Lalonde, all 4 drivers in Valkyries. And then Graf, Chen, Smith. There's some great battles all the way through. And this is for the GTs. We've obviously got the Boyces in the Lamborghinis running very close to each other. Then Ahmed Abdallah and Maya in the Porsche. So still, they put on an excellent display here. And what is Maya going to be able to do? As that's for the lead. Hall has got through on De Bruyn. So Hall has taken the lead from Wood to De Bruyn. So this is how the deed was done. They came out of Le Mans. And it just looked as though either Le Mans was the corner that settled it out, up to Ullman and into Sunset. Did Wood to De Bruyn just lose the Pagani? I wonder if he just overshot on the brakes. He's gone very heavy on the brakes, and yes, it looks like he's just overcooked it on the way through. Drifted wide. Brian Hall said, thanks very much, I'll take the lead of the race. So back to live pictures, and that is Brian Hall's nemesis, Wood to De Bruyn. He's gone. He's absolutely gone. He's a second and a half clear.
That's a massive pace advantage. So obviously paints the picture of why Hall was able to stick on the back of De Bruyn. He was just waiting for the right opportunity to make the move. As the Boyces and Abdallah are all, it's all kicking off in the GTs. There's these 5-6 cars. As Abdallah goes wide, that was borderline overtaking off the track, but I think it's legal. I think he had a tire on the road still. As Abdallah is absolutely charging, as this is kind of what he's going to be known for now in this series. That's 2 different series, 2 different races. He's charged through the back of the field.
Well, my timing screen in front of me seems to think that George Angelidis is leading. Now, I don't want to offend George Angelidis, but he is in a GT car, so he's not likely to be leading when you've got the Hypercars up in front.
Right.
And look at how close this battle is now. Wood to De Bruyn has got back on the horse in the Pagani. A big tank slapper from John Uyan, who just manages to catch his car. He's only 3.6 seconds back from these two. So you can imagine how tight this race is going to be between Hall and De Bruyn. But Brian Hall is keeping it nice and planted. Careful, don't leave that door open. De Bruyn's going to take it. Oh, this is close, and now they're going to get into traffic. So Wood to De Bruyn in the Pagani Imola. They both passed the BMW. No issues there. But this is where things are going to get very racy. Brian Hall and Wood to De Bruyn.
Hall's a little bit wide there. Oh, no, he's all right. Walter De Bruyn, very tight line. He's trying to have a look.
He definitely gave it a good go, didn't he? Brian Hall was just drifting a little bit wide off the apex, and Wood to De Bruyn thought, well, there might just be a sniff of a gap to get on the inside there. Wasn't quite happening, but now he's doing it again. See, Brian Hall's being a little bit more conservative off the apex, whereas Wood to De Bruyn can afford to be a little bit more gung-ho. And they're going to try again into the hairpin. Brian Hall initially employing the karting line to just try and hold the inside position there from Wood to De Bruyn. And as they skate off the turn again, the Pagani Imola is all over the back of Brian Hall. 1 hour to go. And obviously the time is going to tick down pretty rapidly in this race. As esports endurance races goes, this one does have a habit of going pretty quickly. So Hall and De Bruyn having a great battle. We're watching the battle in the GTs again. This is Lane, Dans, Maya and Angelidis once you put it all together. But Lane is the man who currently leads behind. Oh, sorry, it's Barker who actually leads the way in the BMW. So Barker is still keeping it together. Lane in second position in the GT race amongst the AMs. So some great battles. There is Lane as he continues. Oh, sorry, no. Is that Lane? No, sorry, that's Dans who's trying to close up on him. So the Audi running through. Oh, no, that's the Acura running through, I should say. That is Maya and Angelidis having their little duel for position. But there is the Bentley. That is Dan's. Trying to close up on the Mustang of Lane. And as they come through down the main straight into the first turn, no major problems for Dan's or Lane at this moment in time. And now we are watching the Audi, the Acura, I should say. That is Maya and Angelidis still close together in terms of their draw position. Is there going to be a move on the inside of the Ferrari? Well, there is, because the Ferrari just drifts off the road.
I think a little bit of a distraction tactic there from Angelidis, just looking in, and the Ferrari, I think, missed their braking marker by just a little bit, and that's all you need when the track's wet.
Yeah, Angelidis just trying to guide it round. What can Dans do about Lane as they come down to the braking zone again? Just trying to keep it nice and planted through these apexes. You don't want to get too much wheel spin, otherwise the car will jackknife and just slew across the road. And for the car behind, it's very difficult to do anything but just follow in. We've seen it time and time again. We actually saw it last week here at Sebring, Troy, a few times when a driver would spin off and the car behind would just try and deviate away from the accident. But then, unfortunately, you steer away thinking it's the right direction and the car just spins towards you. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly in the wet, the stopping distance, when a car is not facing the right way, it's just not going to stop. It's just going to keep sliding. Oh, they both run a little bit wide and pushing each other hard. This is actually for the lead in GT AM. Cameron Barker leading GT Pro up the road, but Lane and Dan's going at it for the lead in GT AM.
So as the race continues on between Lane and Dans, this is about who's going to make the mistake. Dan's getting very close behind Lane in the Mustang. Oh, he's going to go off the road.
Ooh. And he's going to lose out to Mayer and Angelidis as well, so a costly mistake from Dans.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was kind of predictable. Once he got that close to the rear bumper of Lane's Mustang, you had two choices there. Spin the car or run off the road, and he chose the latter. So it obviously costs him less time to do that.
Oh, De Bruyn.
That is De Bruyn. De Bruyn has dropped it. Now, the big question there was that, how big an error in judgment was that on De Bruyn's part? That looks like it's already happened at that point. So Wood to De Bruyn, sliding the Pagani Imola. I really want to see if we can pick that up, because that is a big mistake, and that could cost him the win, because he's dropped a hell of a long way back there. So let's see what happened as a result of that, because that is an absolute nightmare from his point of view.
I'm not even sure the best angle to put this. I'm going to put this on Swingman, but I think we have an issue with a GT car.
Oh dear, so let's have a look. Oh yes, so we're going to ride from behind. Oh, this is not going to end well, I can tell. But this is where we've got from Wood to De Bruyn. Is he about to have a GT? Goes straight into the back. Yes.
Oh,
no. No. Very sloppy. Oh, and he got hit again. And Miguel Ramos had very little room to cover. Well, that's so unfortunate for Wood to De Bruyn. He gets clipped not once, but twice as he goes through. And that has dropped him down to, what is that, 9th place now, I think? So we go back to live pictures, and Wood to De Bruyn, he's in 9th position, yeah, but just in front of Smith and behind Jerry Chen. So Wood to De Bruyn is not going to be happy with the back markers today. But we did say that last week we lost a lot of race leaders based on the traffic, and it's happened again. So here's John Uyan, who is now the next man to go after Brian Hall, and he has caught him right up. There's only 0.4 of a second between them.
Yeah, I don't know where this has come from. In all the mix-up with Walter De Bruyn, John is looking very racy as well. So Hall maybe has dropped a little bit of pace or something. But John's looking very racy, and that was a good run off the penultimate corner. I keep wanting to call it the final corner. Miguel Ramos kicks the tail out at the bottom of the shot there. Uyan with the lead has a think about it. Hall a little bit twitchy under brakes.
Well, I'm afraid my timing screen still thinks that we're in qualifying, so ignore that. That's my current decision has decided, you know what? The timing screen ain't going to work today, so let's just go on what we got on screen. Hall leads. Uyan has dropped back a little bit, but now we're in the midst of traffic. So this could get very interesting from here on out as we watch the battle again, side by side. This is tight between De Bruyn and Chen. Chen decides, do you know what? Discretion's the better part of valor here. I'm going to let the Pagani Imola go on this occasion. He's going to knit up the inside of the Lamborghini Huracan. No problems there, lapping Boyce. Yeah, it's a very, very tricky race now, and it's just going to get more and more tricky as John Uyan senses an opportunity in the traffic here with Brian Hall. So Brian Hall versus John Uyan. Lamborghini versus Bugatti. This is going to be tight as they work their way through the traffic. They've got the Porsche in front of them. Please don't trip them up. As we ride on board here with John Uyan, picking his moment, just going with Brian Hall. Essentially what he wants to do here, Troy, is let Brian Hall make the error. He wants to stay as close to him as possible. Rolls the car off. Look how much correction there is behind the wheel.
Yeah, and he's hitting those curbs as well. He's going to be on a knife's edge through a lot of this. This is where the Bugatti really has some serious understeer.
You've got to remember that Brian Hall has obviously been just trying steadily to get under the skin of Wout de Bruin, and eventually it was de Bruin that ended up losing the position to Brian Hall initially. They come out of Jean de Bien.
Hall made a mistake there.
Yes, he did. So now John Uyan is going to get very close. Down the Almond Straight. He's actually got a faster exit. So this is going to be the run to Sunset. John Uyan may go for the lead here into the Sunset corner in the final turn. He lines him up. He's got to be very brave on the brakes here. He's going to have a think about it. Can he lull Brian Hall wide? Hall does go wide. Can John Uyan stop the car on the apex and get back on the inside? No, he can't. So John Uyan putting pressure on Brian Hall, but the mistake isn't there yet. Down the main straight, up to the first corner again. Listen to that engine on the acceleration. You can hear the wheel spin.
Although they're both struggling to find apexes here, which is obviously not a critique. It's just what everybody is dealing with. As Hall goes a little bit wide as well. Hall is under pressure here. He has really gone wide on a few apexes in a row as he cooked his tires a little bit, maybe. We're obviously on 2X tire wear, and he's been fighting the whole way through. Uyan now down the run to the very bumpy braking zone for the hairpin. Not quite close enough. He doesn't have the straight line advantage that we would expect, but he does have the advantage over the brakes. Looking for an up and under, not quite close enough to up and under him.
Brian Hall was driving like a kart racer there. He was just protecting the inside line. There's no way John Uyan could get on the inside of him there. He had to hold the line. So Brian Hall decided, you know what, I can afford to lose a couple of seconds here just to give John Uyan a little bit of a wind-up merchant's tactic here. They go through Cunningham, out through the left, and up towards Tower. You've got to get the braking point just right here because you can hit the curb at the wrong moment. Brian Hall just trying to keep the car in the middle of the road. They get back on the power and through Bishop, and then they will head up towards Jean de Bien. This is going to be a tricky part of the course. Look how much power John Uyan is able to put down there to try and close up on Brian Hall. Hall is a little bit tetchy out of Jean de Bien up towards Le Mans. He has to think about it. Can he put Brian Hall off here? Into the right-hander at Le Mans. Plenty of curb. Again, a little bit of a better exit off the turn from Uyan compared to Brian Hall. He's going to try again. But can he just throw caution to the winds and be audacious? He's got to think about the long-term gain here. He backs out of the corner and lets Brian Hall go through on his own. This is wise driving from both of them. But you can see, look, as you mentioned before, Troy, there is just bags of oversteer in the tighter corners for the Bugatti. He's faster in a straight line, that's for clear. But in the corners, the Lamborghini's the better car to have.
Yeah, through some of the sweepers, the Bugatti has a big advantage, and then through other... Oh, we have a car off on the left hitting the Sebring board. That's
one of the Valkyries.
Yeah, what has happened there?
So that looks like it might be... Well, is that going to be Lalonde possibly going off the road there? Oh, no, it's Ramos. It's Ramos who's disappeared from the fray. So Mikel Ramos has dropped a long way back. He's now 17th.
Oh,
so
he has
big
pitted,
problems
though.
for Mikel Ramos. He pitted, yeah, but he's fallen off the road on the way out.
Yeah, yeah, that's the bigger problem is falling off the road. He is the first one to pit, though. So that could be something to play into his hands as we go further on, as Graf has a look at Smith.
Yep, this is once again Valkyrie versus Ferrari. I love seeing the FXXK Evo in racing trim. I've always felt it's an incredible race car that's just been denied its chance to have a go. Thank goodness for esports. Here's the move on the Valkyrie on the inside, just trying not to trip over the Ferrari. You've got a little bit of a traffic jam here for Graf. This is exactly what Graf didn't want. Smith is grinning from ear to ear. Deal with that, Norm. He just can't pick his way through quickly. He's got to be so careful. Meanwhile, in the GTs, it's no change. It's still Lane leading the way. But Mayer in the Acura has got very close to him all of a sudden.
And he goes
Drifts a little bit
wide for Walter de Bruin.
He had to get out of the way, the Pagani Imola. Now he's hoping that Lane will have to do the same thing as they come up towards Tower. Get back on the power. And Walter de Bruin is going to go around the outside. But Mayer lost a little bit more time to Lane. And now they've got the Valkyrie there in position as well. That is obviously going to be Lalonde trying to get past. So Gilles Lalonde will just get a little bit more traction out of Jean de Bien. But no, he's got to wait. Because Mayer is putting his car in all the right places. So Gilles Lalonde has to wait till the Allman Straight. So up towards Sunset once again. But this is just as intriguing a battle as up front. Ouyan has now fallen 4.4 seconds back from Brian Hall. So whether Ouyan just made a mistake or has just decided to let Hall have it for a little bit and get himself back together again, but he's certainly lost a bit of time as we watch Wayne Hutchison in the AMG 1 Mercedes trying to close up on Jerry Chen in the Lambo. And this is going to be fascinating as they get up to the first corner. Throw it in.
Tighter line because they're on the inside of a GT car. But no problem for either of them.
No, indeed, because I just thought you had a point there because I thought the wheel spin was going to catch them out. But they've been able to get the car slowed down in good position. Here's Nielsen Vestergaard having a go at Benchka. Nielsen Vestergaard, cool, this is going to be brave in a sunset. Can he hold it? Nicely done from the Glickenhaus. He gets it stopped, but he's got a car in his way. That's going to be awkward, but he does manage to get traction off the turn enough.
Oh, wheel spin it.
Speed. Oh, they're taking each other off. Into the wall goes the Glickenhaus. Oh, and the Ferrari's going to have nowhere to go. The Ferrari has nowhere to go. That's going to be both of them out of the race.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's really unfortunate for Nielsen Vestergaard. The sole Glickenhaus. He just got collected by the Ferrari. I think the Ferrari was trying to get out of the way, was trying to second guess where the Glickenhaus was going to go. And I'm afraid he just ended up... This is exactly what we were talking about. When the car jackknifes in front of you, you've got to go left, you've got to go right. You don't want to pitch the wheel too hard, otherwise you're going to spin anyway. And you just end up cannoning into the car in front, Troy. It's almost unavoidable.
It looked like the Ferrari was expecting the Hypercar to keep sliding out of the way back onto it's kind of the switchback, right? Because you come off that corner, you're on the left side of the track, and then you're going to transition to the right. It's almost like the Ferrari expected the Hypercar to keep sliding out towards that transition point where you'd go to the right side of the track, setting up for T1. But it didn't. The Glickenhaus stopped right there, and the Ferrari, unfortunately, couldn't react quick enough on the wet track to get out of the way. As De Bruin has now caught up to Ben Borman. He's tearing it back up on his recovery drive here.
So this is a brilliant comeback from Wouter De Bruin. And Ben Borman is really going to struggle to keep him at bay in this sort of pace. But he is leaning on him. He's got through the drivers that he would have found relatively easy. And this is Mayer going wheel to wheel with Lane. That's a lead change. So up to the lead comes the Acura. A good run from Mayer there. So he has got himself past Lane and overtaken the leader in the AM category. Let's have a look at this again. This started quite a way back on the Allman Straight. But I think this might end up being a mistake from the Ford Mustang. He's gone in to the final turn. Look at the wheel spin.
He locked up there. He went quite a bit wide. Look how wide he is compared to the Acura inside.
So that was nice and easy, really, for Mayer off the turn. And I think in an hour-long race, you've got to just kind of say, well, I think he got me there. So Lane just lets him go. And so back into the race he will go. We will return to live pictures. There we are. So Lane is still there or thereabouts, leading the AM category, don't forget. But he is now 4th overall of the GT cars out there. So this is not bad at all for Lane. He just needs to keep this going. But now for Brian Hall out in the lead of the race in the Lamborghini, he has stretched the gap over Ouyan to 7.6 seconds. So that just shows you how consistent Brian Hall has been able to be over the stint. And look at De Bruin. He is not taking 5th position. He wants a lot more from this race than that. So Ben Borman down the Allman Straight. We go on board with the Pagani Imola. Is this going to happen into Sunset? Oh my goodness, De Bruin so much later on the brakes. Now he can chuck it in on the inside. Wouter De Bruin with so much confidence. Borman's lost it into the wall.
Wow, the pressure from De Bruyne under brakes maybe put Borman to let up on his brake pressure just a little bit in case De Bruyne tried to put it on the inside, which he did, and on his attempt to get back onto the throttle, Borman swung it round, coming out of Sunset.
I kind of want to see that again, because I don't think there was any contact between them at all. I think De Bruyne just kind of had the moment on the inside line there already nailed, and as you say, Borman was just so desperate to get back in on terms of acceleration and traction. I think that just ended up being Borman's mistake, unfortunately. But Wouter De Bruyne was putting him under so much pressure. He just charged in on the inside apex on the brakes. So let's try and have a look at it at the end of the Ullmann straight. As Wouter De Bruyne was putting Borman under pressure. Here we go. And this is Borman. Look, you can see De Bruyne's already gone so far in. The back end comes around. Nothing Borman could do. Bang.
That'll do it.
Yeah, and that's going to unsettle his rhythm, and I think he may have lost out to Lalonde as well. Oh no, he has been able to stay in front of Gilles Lalonde, but not by much. So the two Valkyries are going to battle for position as they continue. So Borman and Lalonde battling for 5th place. Oh, big tag slapper in the middle there as he's really trying not to throw it away as they come up to tower. But Borman and Lalonde, in the very similar Valkyries, they are really going to struggle. And here is De Bruyne. How is he on the back of Whitehead already?
Look at this guy.
This is phenomenal traction from the Pagani Imola, and he's going to come straight out behind the corner at Le Mans and go side by side down the Ullmann straight, and he's already trying to put Whitehead under pressure. Whitehead won't fall for it just yet. But is there just going to be more confidence on the brakes? Yes, look, he's done it again. Straight through on the inside. Nothing Whitehead can do. The Pagani Imola is plugged into this race circuit like a Scalextric car. He's got so much grip. This is absolutely magic from De Bruyne.
Unbelievable recovery. Uyan's in the lane now.
Now, that's the first of the big guns. So John Uyan, at the 41 minutes to go mark, has come into the pits from 2nd place. So that means that De Bruyne has about 23 seconds to make up to Brian Hall, but he is now in 2nd position at this point. But that means he was in 3rd at the time of the pit stops. Oh, and that's we've got a car off the road there. I think that was one of the Acuras. So a bit of a moment there. Couldn't quite make out who that was falling off the road, but certainly a big moment in the GTs. But De Bruyne just charging away from Whitehead. And there is John Uyan in the pits. He should come out again in relative comfort. I reckon he'll get out again in about 12th or 13th place, around the sort of Benchka Bonaldo mark. He might even get out ahead of Benchka, actually. Here is Wayne Hutchison, all over the back of Jerry Chen. Lamborghini versus Mercedes, and they've got one of the Mustangs behind them on the road. Hutchison is finally starting to get a little bit of confidence in this Mercedes. It started a little bit lackluster for the AMG 1, but now he seems to have got a little bit of a handle on it as he continues to try and get up to speed. Trouble is, it's so easy with these cars. They're so top heavy. You get a lot of wheel spin once you apply the throttle. You've got to be so delicate. You have to caress that pedal rather than stab on it. At the best of times, in the rain, you've basically got to whisper the pedal to get it on the throttle, Troy. This is literally like dancing on ice cubes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have an update from Felipe Marazzi, the Ferrari driver who ran into the Glickenhaus. Says the cockpit view was very low, so he could not see the Glickenhaus spun out in front of him.
So there they come down the straight. Whoops! That's a little bit more racetrack than is needed. That was close. Jerry Chen and Hutchison, here we go. This is the big problem we were talking about, Troy. They're just going to get no opportunity in the traffic. They've got to balance this carefully. Tidy it up, tidy it up. You're going to drift into the Porsche if you're not careful. Nice correction.
And Peter Mayer almost hit the wall in his attempt. He got put off a little offline, obviously, by Jerry Chen, and almost hit the wall on the outside, did Peter Mayer. But they all get through with no position changes, which I really didn't think would happen as they were 2v2 going to the Sunset Bend. But
yeah, that was
all over
very
the back
careful.
of Benenke as well.
Yep, very good point. So there is Bonaldo. Ernesto Bonaldo all over the back of Benchke. Now, is this going to be a run down to Sunset with an overtake? Well, Benchke has a little bit of a wobble, and Bonaldo's going to try and make his bid. This is going to be close. And, oh, well, he's got to get out of the way because they've got a car in front. So there was not a lot that Benchka could do about that one. Bernaldo decided to go in for it. And that was hesitation from Benchka. And that was all that Bernaldo needed. Here we go, Hutchison and Chen. P6 up for grabs as they come up towards Cunningham through the left. And then heading into the braking zone for the right-hander. They've got one of the M6s in front of them.
And importantly, this is the lead in Hypercar AM, actually. These two are leading Hypercar AM.
Yeah, so Jerry Chen trying his best to keep it in position from Hutchison. Hutchison in the AMG 1 is keeping this very tidy at the moment. Still in there behind Chen. They've got that M6 that is not really getting out of the way at the right moment. This could be awkward as we watch Benchka and Bernaldo still dueling away. Now, what has Hutchison been able to do there to slot himself in behind another BMW? Hang on a minute. Yeah, I think wait for it. It's the same BMW. He hasn't been able to get past it.
And Brian Hall hits the lane. Walter De Bruyn is now leading the race.
Okay, so that's the race leader, Brian Hall in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini. 37 minutes left of the race. And this is going to be a big lean. Ren and Graf in the two Ferraris. Two different teams, of course. You've really got to be committed to lean on that one around the outside. And this is well read by Graf. He stays out of harm's way there. But that is flirting with the limits there as Ren in the Grazie Ragazzi Ferrari holds the position for the moment in front of Graf. Now back with Benchki and John Ouyan. So John Ouyan has dropped to 12th after his pit stop. But where is he in relation to Ramos? Well, he's in front of him. So that's worked out good. And now about that, Benchki just surrenders the corner essentially. Ouyan, you're quicker. Go for it.
Yeah, good on him. Hutchinson now in the lane as well.
So Hutchison obviously deciding to be the first driver in the AM category battle of Hypercar to come in the pits.
Brian Hall did not take tires.
No, he did not. That's a good observation. So Brian Hall is only in 8th position. So he is a long way out in front of some of his rivals who have pitted at the same sort of time there. And spin for Ouyan. Ouyan spins it right in front of Benchka. He's got to be careful here. Oh, he actually nudges the wall on the way through. This is so difficult to correct because he's in an awkward position. You don't know what's coming round the bend. You've just got to hope. And he's going to clip the wall on the way round. Oh, this is
the thing
messy.
Is, you can't spin up the tires on an all-wheel drive car. The rears won't spin, so you can't flick the car around.
That's a big error for John Ouyan. That's another hammer blow to his race strategy gone. Now this is awkward because we've got Abdallah in the Audi, I think they're trying to work his way through the field. DiMarzo, Miller, Abdallah, and Jones are all very close to each other, and they've got one of the Valkyries just trying to get past them all as we watch Jones. And he's trying to close up on the Audi of Ahmed Abdallah. And that's going to be the Valkyrie tucking their way through. Miller, I
think he's trying to hit the lane. That's why he was stuck. Yeah, he's trying to hit the lane, but so's the Valkyrie.
Oh dear, that's a little bit of a nudge under the pit lane potentially there, but Miller was in completely the wrong place at the wrong time for the Valkyrie. You just kind of had to go nuts and just let him go.
Zelenki gets put offline a little bit by the Lamborghini, but he was right on the back of Minguez in front.
Yep, so that is the vantage of Zalewski into the pits. That's Jones, and obviously in there still with the Valkyrie number 7. That is, of course, Gilles Lalonde, who is coming to the pits. And, that's a bit of a clumsy exit. Who was that getting out of the pits? Whitehead going out of the pit lane, but who else was that struggling to get out?
I think Borman was struggling to get around the car of Stephen Miller.
So that's a little bit lackadaisical there. There is Miller's car, which is now slightly nudged sideways as a result of that, as we watch DiMarzo battling away with Ahmed Abdallah. So Ahmed Abdallah, who's one of the fastest drivers in Group C in his trusty Sauber Mercedes, having a great run in the Audi R8 as he works his way back up into position as he battles there with Barry DiMarzo in the BMW. 7/10 of a second between the two cars. Wouter De Bruyn is still your leader. Second overall is actually Jerry Chen, who is the leader in the Hypercar AM at the moment, such as the to and fro of the pit stops. Now, the big question is going to be, Troy, when Wouter De Bruyn makes his pit stop, will he do the same as Brian Hall and elect not to take tyres?
If he does, he'll end up behind Hall, but he may not know. Obviously, he wouldn't know that Hall didn't take tires. It's hard to tell when you're in the thick of it as a Corvette will get out of the way here of... Oh, that was actually Minguez. Did he have an issue there, or was trying to let Ben Borman through, but Zelenki wasn't having it? I kind of missed what happened there, but we do have a swap there as Ben Borman gets a little bit of a tank slapper.
Yeah, Borman's off the road. He just lost traction completely. And that's a real headache for Ben Borman. It's easily done as we look at Moyne battling away for the Hypercar victory in the AM category.
And Moyne was running on the wet side of the track, so I wonder if the drying line has formed enough where the wets are starting to heat up. And you'll want to run back on the wet side of the track to cool them back down on the straightaways. I don't know, I'm just speculating. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is as well, you can clearly see for yourselves that there's no question of going to slick tyres at any point, because if you come even slightly off the racing line...
Oh, there's De Bruyne!
How on earth has De Bruyne done that? He leads, and he drifts wide. Smith is going to go through and retake the lead, but De Bruyne almost took the lead of the race permanently after his pit stop. What a comeback from Wood to De Bruyne. Now he's going to have Smith on the brake as they come down to the hairpin once again. What a recovery drive from the Pagani Imola of Wood to De Bruyne. No wonder he was the fastest in qualifying, but even so, he's now going to try and put Smith in the Valkyrie under pressure. This is going to be tight for the win here, and Moyne in the Lamborghini is going to be very close to them on the recovery drive. Smith is the Hypercar AM leader and the overall leader at this point. Wood to De Bruyne, absolutely determined to take back the lead of this race, and he has done an incredible job out of the pits to keep himself in position. And let's not forget that Brian Hall is the car behind this lot. There he is in the background in fourth position. So this is a great race.
He's absolutely charging, and that's who technically De Bruyne is realistically fighting Smith, I think. Yeah, Smith has yet to pit. So this is actually just kind of holding up De Bruyne in his attempt to get away from Brian Hall. Right behind De Bruyne is Moyne, who's fighting with Smith. But De Bruyne is fighting with Hall, who's back, and we have an Audi off to the side. Is going to impede Moyne's run. That might give Hall a chance to get through on Moyne. Hall had a much cleaner exit, and Smith is going to go defensive on De Bruyne in front.
Yeah, because Smith doesn't need to concern himself with this at all. It's like, hey, I'm racing. I'm going for the win. Why not? De Bruyne could have his own battle, but I'm in the race with Moyne at the moment. So is this going to be Smith coming into the pits? It is. So Wood to De Bruyne has somehow fought his way back into the lead. And also in comes Moyne. So the lead battle in Hypercar AM comes into the pits. And it leaves De Bruyne and Hall as if nothing happened in the first 40 minutes. They are back battling for the win again. I love this sport.
Actually kind of crazy. On the back straight, we have Hutchison, Bernaldo, and Whitehead all together, and all three have stopped. So this is all for position. One of these guys didn't take tires.
What an incredible race this is turning out to be. De Bruyne and Hall are first and second, and moving up to third is going to be Hutchison in the Mercedes AMG, but he still has to stop. Bernaldo is going to be right behind him, as out of the pit lane they will come. Still a great battle.
So trying to get around the Mustang. Bernaldo tagged the front of the Mustang at the same time. Whitehead still in the back of Hutchison, but Bernaldo had a little bit of contact with the Mustang. They were all three trying to clear down into T2, keeping an eye on the gap with Brian Hall. It was down to 4/10 on the back of De Bruyne as Whitehead has a look to the inside of Hutchison down into the hairpin. Not quite close enough, and I want to say that Whitehead had locked the inner tire there as well. There was a little bit of a controlled slide into the pit lane, or the hairpin there. But
yeah, the thing is, how hard do you push it in the inside of that apex? How big a risk are you willing to take to throw the car on the inside line? It's always a bit of a gamble anyway here at Sebring, but in the wet, you just don't know how much grip and how much mechanical traction the car is going to pick up. And look at Whitehead slipping and sliding as he comes through towards Tower once again. They've got a Porsche in front of them. I think that's Peter Mayer. So he gets well out of the way. Nicely done. So they're going to get through. And off goes Bernaldo. Bernaldo sweeps straight off the road. Oh, that could be a game ending. That could be race over. A lot of damage there.
Oh, no.
Oh, Bernardo just washes out completely. He just makes sure that he's got space to recover. Let's have a look at it again. So Bernardo, he just decided, he saw the 2 cars in front going round the outside, and he thought, well, there might be enough traction to do the same thing. But I'm afraid for Ernesto Bernardo, look, this is how he does it. He watches the 2 cars in front. They're obviously going to go round Peter Meyer in the Porsche. They go right. He's got the dry line there on the outside. And look, Meyer just moves across, and it's enough to distract him. 1, 2, 3 big impacts with the wall. Not a lot Ernesto Bernardo can do to avoid that. That's unfortunate.
He has gotten going again, but he's going right to the lane.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much a fight for the win over for Ernesto Bernardo.
Brian Hall!
Oh my goodness, here we go again. Brian Hall's caught back up to De Bruyne. Here we go. Ding, ding. Round 2. Back to your corners, boys. And Wood to De Bruyne and Brian Hall are ready to take it on for another go at the lead.
No rest in the action. I can't believe we only have 27 minutes to go. I feel like...
Yeah, where has that gone? Seriously, where's that time gone? De Bruyne and Hall still battling away, 0.6 of a second between them. Whitehead is half a minute back, but these two are going to make it a race for the victory right to the death the way things are currently going. And you can see several times, we've already seen this, Troy, all it takes is one mistake, one missed apex, one trip of a back marker, and the race changes hands completely. Brian Hall's going to have to come very late into the corner, apex, to get past this guy. He's going to get held up.
Stephen Miller's not going to make it easy for him. Around the outside, he tries, doesn't have the grip. Yeah, absolutely held up there by Stephen Miller in the Speedworks car. And Hall has dropped now over a second as Bernaldo comes out of the pits. And yes, you were talking about one mistake. Uyan, the championship leader, fighting for the lead as Bernaldo goes way wide. I don't think that car's gonna make it.
Oh! That's a car just rejoining right in the path of Brian Hall. That's not what he needed. Bernaldo, oh dear.
Where do I look?
It's very tricky to tell, but Bernaldo comes straight out of the pits and straight off the road. I think there's more damage in that car than he first realized. Look at it.
Yeah, it's twitching, and he just got a penalty for exceeding track limits to add insult to injury.
Well, this is one of those days where you think, I've got 26 minutes left of the race. My car is bent and skew-whiffed like a banana. And I've got a penalty. Is it really worth fighting? Look, he's really struggling to get the car slowed down and even to point in the right direction coming off the turns. Maybe I'm misreading it, but certainly on the way coming through, Bernaldo seems to be getting back up to speed again now, but...
And he is 5th in AM, so there's still points to play for there. He's still in the top 10. So he might just try to nurse it home. However, he's not that far ahead of Benetti.
Oh, he's gone again! Oh, this is going to go right to the barriers. How did he get that stopped? Well, this is going to be a race of attrition for Ernest Bernaldo on his own here. I think he's really going to struggle to bring this home. But as you say, he does still have points to compete for. He's got to the scene of the accident.
He might have done aero damage, but he needs to do suspension repairs. He needs suspension repairs, not just aero repairs.
Straight to the barriers. What a shame. This is just, unfortunately, this is... They do say, don't they, that the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I'm afraid that is pretty much what Bernaldo is going through right now. Here's Borman. Right in behind Hutchison.
And we're actually catching up to where Bernaldo is as well, which could play a factor into Sunset. Bernaldo definitely needs suspension repairs. He tried to do just aero, probably, just to get back out on track in his P5. Whoops. As an Acura is put off wide and spins on the line. Hopefully gets that repaired. Orman to the inside of Hutchinson.
Yep. Down into Sunset, and he manages to sweep across to the racing line before they even turn in. But has he unsettled the car in doing that? No, he gets it stopped beautifully through the apex. So Ben Borman, P4. Very nicely done at the moment, and he's only 5 seconds back from Jason Whitehead in the similar Valkyrie, as Borman sets the fastest lap of the race. He really is on it.
Wow, and so I did see Bernaldo in the pit lane there, so good call, needs more repairs.
Yeah.
Borman as well tags the grass, it's going to be fine, but Borman had such a huge weight transfer to get back on the racing line. I really thought we were going to see him veer off. And this is getting interesting because we haven't had any rain for a while, and you can see clearly the drying line is starting to form. The question is, as we get towards maybe the last 10 minutes of the race, is there a big enough dry line that someone braves it on slicks? As these wet tires will start to heat up a lot on a dry line.
It looks like we've lost Graf in the Ferrari. He's showing up as DNF. And I think Nielsen Vestergaard and Marazzi obviously out from their earlier collision, along with Vianney, Carmen, and Hagenars, as well as Aiken in the Lamborghini up the inside. Bernardo's back. And I have a feeling that he's either going to get this very, very wrong or very, very right. Has he made the adjustments needed to make the car feel strong again? We'll find out on this lap because this is his out lap, and we'll see if the car will turn in enough. Meanwhile, Gilles Lalonde is all over the back of Hutchison, and just look how much of a wobble the car has as it stands back on the power. A big twitch as he comes out of tower, and on the run to Jean Debien. We ride on board with him through Jean Debien, the right-hander. Hutchison's held up here. Patience, Gilles. This could be your opportunity to get into P5. Off the turn, back on the power. Let's listen. Going to sweep by on the inside. He's going to find the inside line here on Wayne Hutchison. And they're going to have a car in the way. This is perfect for Gilles Lalonde. He boxes him in. Hakkinen style. Excellent run from Gilles Lalonde as he makes the move and leaves Wayne Hutchison to deal with the fallout.
Amazing move. That was perfectly timed. And now sunset has had its sunset. So we're moving in to the nighttime run. I totally forgot we were going to have nighttime running for the last bit as well, which is going to make the drying line, wet line conversation harder to have because you won't be able to see it as clearly. But it does look like the cars continue to try as Porsche was off stage right.
And you're going to see a lot of that in the latter half of this race. We've only got about 24 minutes left on the clock. So it's really going to be tricky from here on in. Make that 22, in fact, as we watch Mikel Ramos closing up again on Jerry Chen. Oh, nearly into the back bumper. He almost parked in the boot then.
Oh my. I mean, he was catching at a rapid rate. That braking must have caught him out into T1 there. As De Bruyne
has got a penalty. Now what has Wouter De Bruyne got a penalty for? That's interesting, because that has thrown a real curveball into the race. Is that for track limits, or is that for a speeding penalty in the pits? Let's see if we can watch it up. Let's pick it up. Let's see what's happened here. So Wouter De Bruyne, I wonder if he's just... Has he cut part of the course, or has he gone for track limits? What has he done? Don't tell me he's taken out a back marker as they go through.
Back marker's right, okay, gets by.
I think he's just over... look, he's cut the course there. Track limits for Wouter De Bruyne.
No way.
Oh dear. Well, that is drama here. So Wouter De Bruyne has picked up a penalty for track limits. Brian Hall will potentially be aware of that, but certainly for Wouter De Bruyne, he now really needs to get his skates on, because that is going to dramatically change the course of this race. Wouter De Bruyne has already had to make one catch-up in this race. Now he's got to do it all again. 20 minutes on the clock, and he may be leading on the road, but with that penalty, his back's to the wall once again.
It might be enough for him to still come out ahead of Whitehead, and he does have the strongest car, as we've seen, but yeah, he'll have a probably 30-odd second delay, which will put him right in front of Whitehead, 28 seconds behind Hall. He did not take tires on the last round, probably hoping that he'd be able to go for dries, which is looking more and more likely that we might have dry tires on the last run. But as the headlights sheen across the backside of the track, I saw a lot of water still on the outside. So if you do go for dries, it'll be a nice edge, because if you go wide at all, you will skate out wide like there's no tomorrow.
So Brian Hall does not actually need to stress himself out too much here. He just needs to stay close to the back of De Bruyne and keep it together as we watch Gilles Lalonde battle with Jason Whitehead for third position. It is pitch black here at Sebring for the final 20 minutes of this race as Minguez is in the pits. And that's a mistake from Whitehead. Lalonde is going to get alongside, but not quite enough to really make the gamble. Gilles Lalonde really starting to pressurize Jason Whitehead now as they go through Tower and on the run to Jean Debien. They will be on the power through Bishop. And this is where it really gets tricky, because you've got the dry line, you've got wet patches around the course, and it's dark. So you're not going to be able to see quite so easily what happens. There could be a few drivers effectively driving blind here as they come out of Jean de Bien into Le Mans, the right-hander, and onto the Almond Straight. This is where it gets really tricky. Minguez has picked up a penalty. That'll be for speeding in the pits, no doubt. But what a tricky race this is going to be to the finish, as now Lalonde is going to make his bid on Whitehead into Sunset. He's not quite close enough. So they come through into the right-hander and back on the power. But this is where the race can be made or broken.
And I think we had a position change, and we're going to take us back a little bit. I was keeping an eye on Abdallah. There he is behind the Mustang of Tom Lane. Let's see what happens here.
So Tom Lane is holding the position for the moment in the rather glitzy-looking Mustang. Abdallah is just trying to keep him under pressure. Goes the long way round. Did he force the issue? Yes, he did! That is commitment. That's brave.
That was insane around the outside of that corner in the wet. Abdallah, take a bow.
Oh, I have no words. No words adequately describe that one. That's just an enormous move from Ahmed Abdallah. And you definitely need some cojones to make that one work. That's pretty special. So Lane is now trying to shake off the attentions of Maya behind him. And there is Boyce. He's closing up on Eugene Mazur. So still they battle in all of the classes. This is what I love about Virtual World Sports Car Championship. This may only be my first season in the category, but I tell you what, the one thing you can say without any objections or any arguments at all, Troy, is that in this category, as we watch Boyce make his bid for Mazur, it doesn't matter which class you're focusing on. It doesn't matter where you look. There's always a battle worth watching. They're going to go door to door through Sunset. Mazur makes it work on the inside of Boyce. Oh, that was close, but Boyce makes it work on the inside of Mazur, I should say. But what a terrific duel. We go on board with John Ouyan, and my point is proven straight away. You can get very close to the battles. Every single class, there's a battle.
So we got a car off on the left. No!
John Ouyan's been tagged. Oh, that's so easy to do. I mean, well saved from John Ouyan as, oh, that looks like one of the Acuras just coming to a stop there on the Almond Straight. But John Ouyan got tagged. How he kept it from a spin. He's picked up a penalty from that.
Oh,
so
no.
Let's have a look and see what they've judged. Are they going to judge that he's basically taken a racer clean off the road? He's coming from around the outside. He's got past one car. Now they've got the McLaren to deal with. So he's got very close behind Hutchison. And, oh, they're going to judge it, aren't they? Oh, they're going to judge avoidable contact. Oh, dear. Poor John Ouyan. I'm afraid that's one of those moments where you kind of really haven't got any choice at all. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I can see why they've given a penalty, because he's slewed into the side of another competitor. But I'm afraid I would say that that's a rather awkward situation for John Ouyan. He comes out of the pits and he comes straight into it. He rejoins in fifth.
I think the penalty was probably, this is going to be very frustrating. It was probably for going wide. It was an automated penalty for going wide.
Oh, I see. Okay.
After he had been hit by the orange car coming off the road. That is quite annoying.
Yeah, that's definitely going to cause a little bit of a headache there. But John Ouyan going well in fifth position. Oh, that's a couple of cars off the road. That's Whitehead and Smith. Oh, they're all going off. Oh, my goodness. There are cars all over the shop. This is what I was saying. This is exactly what I was talking about. You get one car off the road, and it's just a complete cacophony. Now, where's that happened? That's into turn one, I do believe. So, we've got Smith that we're watching. So, Smith has got a slower car in front of him. I don't think it started raining again, has it?
No, I don't think so.
No, so it's just a miss of the breaking point. Who went off first? I think it was Whitehead first. Oh, there's a car in the middle of the road. That's why. Well, that's easy to understand then. So, unfortunately, there is a car stationary on the inside apex that first Whitehead, then Smith, and then two or three more have no chance of avoiding whatsoever. Now, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. There's not a lot you can do about that. So Whitehead recovers in 8th, Smith recovers in 9th, and that's two races severely compromised now, Troy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had to have a giggle as the rFactor 2 started not prioritizing the cars.
It does experiment, doesn't it? That was the Star Trek version of rFactor 2 there. Gravity decided to do its own thing. But
it's just so funny sometimes the way it looks. I wasn't trying to laugh at the incident as Smith goes to the inside.
No, indeed.
But yeah,
no,
we had a BMW spun on the apex of T1 that no one could see. It's a blind apex. As they came through, 4 cars had to countercorrect. They're seeing the cars go off wide on the right, maybe, but the reason for that happening is a car planted on the apex that no one could see. It's unbelievable, as De Bruyn has taken his penalty, by the way, and he's 14 seconds behind Hall for the lead.
Okay, so he's got time to make that up. There's 13 and a half minutes left of the race, as Mikel Ramos, we watch, in 10th position overall, and he is currently 6th in class, I do believe. So they come through, and he's got Smith 1.9 seconds up the road from him in the Valkyrie. Love these cars. And of course, we've heard recently in the real world of motorsport that Zach Brown, Lawrence Stroll is actually considering taking these cars back to Le Mans after all. So this may... Oh, big moment for Ramos! Ramos loses the car altogether. How did he keep that out of the wall? That is good car control from Mikel Ramos, as Borman gets another new fastest lap in.
And I want to say that it was just because he put the car offline that he was back onto a wet part of the track, that he hadn't been braking there for a bit, and it caught him out, because he did have the GT car cleared, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, you're absolutely right. This was only on the run to turn 4, so turn 1 it's perfectly clear. That's a nice move, just a couple of inches away from the wall. He comes offline to take on the Acura. And the car, look, he just loses it in terms of pure traction, but well saved by Mikel Ramos. That is so easily a one-way trip to the barriers, and he saved it.
Yeah, really well done. And he's always got back around the GT car that he had the incident with. Ramos has got back around him now. As Uyan hits the lane, now the question is, does Uyan grab dry tires?
Yeah, I did notice that. So I think there's still a few spots of rain falling. It's not heavy, but it certainly looks like it's not done and dusted yet for the race. Now, Wout de Bruyn has got that gap down to 13.2 with 11 minutes 45 on the clock. It's not quite fast enough that he's making the gains as John Uyan comes into the pits. Now, what is he doing in terms of tyres?
This is the question. Unfortunately, as your timing screen is dead, mine as well, and the pit lane stalling now. He is grabbing tires, so the question is it back on wets to make that last push? Or is
I think you kind of have to, don't you? Because you make too big a gamble this late in the day, then you're essentially just not going to finish anyway. You may as well just match the other drivers around you and go for fresh. The question is, are we going to see another late pit stop from Hall? Are we going to see a quick battle for him? Because he didn't take tyres, don't forget.
Yeah, and the way the timing maps out, unless you were very conservative, because we have 2x fuel, so unless you were very conservative on your engine mapping, which I doubt these guys were, to be fair, you will need a splash.
So we could just get a very dramatic moment from Hall and De Bruyn. Now, De Bruyn had to take a penalty, but he couldn't make a pit stop in that, could he? Because obviously that's a penalty, not a splash and dash. So
right.
De Bruyn is potentially going to have to do exactly the same thing. So as you try and work the strategy of that in the final 10 minutes, if they both need to make a quick splash and dash, well, the race win could go either way, because there's only 12 seconds between them, and De Bruyn is gaining about a second a lap. So Brian Hall is the one with all the pressure here. He cannot afford to make a single error in judgment.
And he'll know now that De Bruyn had an unscheduled, trip to the lane, which he will assume is a penalty. It's very easy to rack up the cut tracks, as you've seen. It's not even necessarily cutting the tracks, just going wide at the wrong corner. So here is Hall making his way through traffic. Yeah, I mean, when we have the question here that Hall, I can't remember now, did he take tires or not? If De Bruyn doesn't...
he did. I think he pointed out at the time when he made his pit stop that he did not take tires. It was a very quick stop.
Right, exactly. So now the question is, does either De Bruyn or Hall need tires? If Hall does take tires and De Bruyn still doesn't take tires, De Bruyn would actually be leading the race on absolutely trashed tires. with Hall on fresh tires behind him. So we'll just have to see as we wind down here.
So Gilles Lalonde has a good chance of a strong finish. He's running in third position. Of all the drivers in the field, Gilles Lalonde has had his moments as well. You can't say there's a single driver that's got away problem-free, but certainly Gilles Lalonde has been able to make the best of it for the majority of the race. We're currently watching Brian Hall in front of Mikel Ramos, who is being lapped, and you just saw Gilles Lalonde going through there on the run to the Sunset Bend. You can make that out because he's 22.9 seconds behind De Bruyn, as this is Dans and Boyce. Oh, this is close. This is for, I think this is for second position, isn't it? In the race battle for the AM category in GT.
It's kind of sort of in the midfield of our GT AM. However, they're the closest on track, and we got to give, the midfield some love as well. We've been focused on the Hypercar quite a bit.
Absolutely right. And this is, of course, Bentley versus Lamborghini. The Continental GT, still a fascinating car. Quite happy to say that it's one of only 2 road-going versions of cars in this field that I've actually driven in real life. The Bentley Continental GT being one of them, the other being the Audi R8. So fascinating cars, but I'm afraid I'll never get to drive the race-going versions. That's just stretching it a little bit too far. 8 minutes left on the clock, and it's very much Wouter de Bruyn putting Brian Hall under massive pressure. The gap has come down again to 10.8 seconds. The way this is going, this is going to be down to if either of them makes a mistake, isn't it? Because that's the kind of race we're having.
Right, and with just 7 minutes, have they actually been conserving fuel the entire race to not need a splash? On the lead, there's no chance that you do that, but that's the only numbers I have from personal experience. There's no chance you go the stint on a proper fuel mix. So have they massively reduced? Oh, but you know what? To throw into the wrench here, as we watch Craig Dans drifting it around, we've been in the wet this whole time. We've been in the wet this whole time using less fuel. So maybe they have been able to conserve and completely avoid the splash by being in the wet, being less full throttle application, less fuel use, and a little bit of engine mix toying with as well.
Yeah, good point. And also, what you have to remember as well is that the drivers that we've seen quite a few times as Ben Borman gets another new fastest lap on the board. He really is making up for the mistakes earlier on, isn't he? He's making up for the lost time. But we've seen quite a few times in the race, Troy, drivers coming off the racing line, the drying line, to cool the tyres down. Now, that is obviously not just going to get off the road. That is Smith. Smith has gone clean off the road there on the exit of the hairpin. And on the run to Cunningham. Oh, he can't even keep the car in a straight line now. He's really got big damage there. So Smith, I'm afraid, just cannons off the road. Let's have another look at it and see how that happened. So this is on the run to the hairpin. We're right on board with him. Let's see what happens. I think he's just missed his braking point and potentially overshot. Oh no, there's a slow car in front. So
he's catching Whitehead ahead. The pink Aston Martin ahead, just 2 cars ahead, is Whitehead. So he gets around Peter Mayer.
Oh, he's lost it on acceleration. He's just lost it in grip. That is such a weird incident. He's in the limit of adhesion as he goes through. And the back end tried to come around. He corrected it and the car bit the apex. So it actually turned to the left.
That's unfair because he was catching Whitehead and we were going to have another Whitehead-Smith battle, as we've said. I don't know how many times this season so far.
I know. Those two are joined at the hip. They're in the same kind of car. And you can't keep them away from each other. But Brian Hall, fair play to him in the lateral stages of this race. He has actually been able to keep the pace pretty steady to Wouter de Bruyn, and he holds the lead now with 11 seconds on the Pagani Imola as we watch Jason Whitehead in the Valkyrie in 7th place, trying desperately not to trip over the Grazie Ragazzi Ferrari in front of him.
He's about 2 seconds behind of Eric Moyne. This is
that's a good point, actually.
Third in Hypercar. Whitehead is in Hypercar proper. Never mind.
He is, but that's a lot of recovery time made up for Whitehead as well, because he's been in the wars. He went into the barriers, don't forget, when they had that car parked on the apex. So Whitehead has been on the comeback trail as well. 4th position in Hypercar Pro. And, he's making up some good positions, making up lost time. The car, look at it, you could just see it just wants to swap ends. The back end wants to come around and be part of the front end of the car as they come up towards Tower. there are your class leaders at this stage, and there is the top 5 in each of the categories. So Brian Hall looks like he's going to take his second win of the season from Wouter de Bruin. Gilles Lalonde in third place, and then Jason Whitehead and Michael Ramos. So fascinating. And this is going to be an important one for Brian Hall in terms of... Oh, and off the road goes Benchka. So Benchka goes off the road in the battle for the AM category. He can't quite get close enough to Ren now to really make an impact after that moment. So Benchka
was just catching too. He was right there on the back of him.
So let's see how that unraveled for Guillaume Benchka, the Brazilian driver. This is on the run to Jean de Bien. So out of tower and on the run to Jean de Bien, one of my favourite corners in motorsport because it's so tricky to get right.
And that's
so
Ren right ahead of him.
Yes, it is. So that is Ren in the Grazie Ragazzi Ferrari. He turns into Jean de Bien. Oh, he doesn't turn at all.
That's bizarre. What happened there?
Yeah, that is a really strange... It's almost like he sort of glitched out. Almost like he was having a complete and total freeze out on the sim there. So a very strange moment. And obviously rFactor doing its thing again as we continue to get back into the action. We're going to go back to live pictures now. But that's unfortunate for Benchka as we've basically been robbed of a fight to 5th position there. And Hall has pitted! Hall has pitted!
Oh, he has pitted, and now we have Whitehead off on the grass.
So Wouter de Bruin is going to take the victory after all then. As Brian Hall comes out of the pits, he was never going to be able to take it to the end of the race. He did need a splash and dash. I think he was trying his best to make sure he had enough fuel to get there. But the question is, if Brian Hall needs it, does de Bruin need it?
And Hall has actually fallen behind Lalonde as well by 12 seconds, so Gilles Lalonde is legitimately in second position, also hasn't taken a second stop, and neither has Hutchinson in 4th. So some guys are definitely trying to make it work.
So here's an argument I want to throw in as Boynton picks up a penalty. Here's the argument. Gilles Lalonde has been in fewer incidents than many of the other drivers around him, which is why he's been able to get to second place. Does that mean he's used less fuel in the attempts to try and recover the car? Because when you get back on the throttle and try and kick the wheel spin back into play to get the car moving, you do lose a little bit more fuel. The car does drink a little bit more excess fuel, so maybe just by keeping it on the island, essentially, he's been able to use less fuel to keep the car moving.
And the guys that have been pushing like crazy the entire race, de Bruin, Hall, and stuff, they've been racing each other, you know, trying, pushing as hard as they could. So if Lalonde was just a little easier on the car, as we have a Lambo off wide.
Goodness me, that was Moyne in third position in Hypercar Am, very nearly costing himself the podium as Ren comes into the pits in the Hypercar Am category. So there's any chance of a top 5 finish gone for the Grazie Ragazzi Ferrari. But this man, Wouter de Bruin, is going into the last lap, and it looks to me as though he's just avoided it. I think he is going to be able to get through without a splash and dash. Who would have thought that everything that's come in this race for Wouter de Bruin, all of a sudden he has now been able to put the Pagani Imola back into position. After qualifying, you've said, well, it's a dead certainty he's going to win this. He's 7 tenths faster than anybody else and nearly 2 seconds ahead of the third place car. But when you take into context all the stuff that's happened since then, you would never have thought Wouter de Bruin would take the victory. And yet, somehow, it seems as though Lady Luck is going to pay him a very nice visit in the nighttime at Sebring.
Yeah, and especially with the fact that he had that, you know, that cut track on top of everything else in the racing and with Brian Hall. I mean, what a run for de Bruin. This is absolutely crazy, and I'm curious now. I think the time's going to hit 0 while he's on the Ulmann Straight. So this is the last lap.
Yes, it is. Wouter de Bruin in the Pagani Imola has worked his magic in time qualifying to get the car to go as fast as it possibly can. He goes up towards Bishop for the last time as we watch Whitehead and Chen. Now, this is an important one because Whitehead and Chen are battling for 5th position overall. Chen is, of course, leading in the AM category. Time is up. And so they're going to battle on the last lap. We'll have to pick that one up. The checkered flag is not for them, by the way. It just waves automatically on rFactor 2 when the time ticks down to 0. But we're going to wait for the leader. Here he comes. Who would have thought this? Who would have predicted Wouter de Bruin to take the victory 10 minutes ago? I certainly wouldn't have done. But the Pagani Imola sorts it out of the final turn into sunset And Wouter de Bruin is going to take an emphatic victory. He probably can't believe it. Wouter de Bruin wins the Sebring 1.2. Absolutely amazing. And what a drive from the Pagani Imola in unbelievable circumstances.
Excellently managed with the fuel and the fact that Hall had to take the splash, but Lalonde actually, let's pick up Lalonde. Lalonde is going to be legitimately in second place by also not needing the splash.
Now, you know what? For me, that's the drive of the day. For Gilles Lalonde, just keeping it in the island, not getting flustered, looking after the car, and keeping it on the island. For me, Gilles Lalonde, driver of the day. We kind of expect that sort of pace from Wouter de Bruin after qualifying. But for Gilles Lalonde, second position, that is the best he could have got from this race today under the circumstances. And he utterly deserves that. So well done to him. Brian Hall finishes up in third. And he's bitterly disappointed with that, isn't he? That could have been his win, and he knows it. So here is Whitehead. 1.4 seconds behind Hutchison. He's got to hope for something pretty drastic to happen to Wayne Hutchison if he's going to take it. But Wayne Hutchison is going to take the Hypercar and victory as, oh, that's a big moment for Smith at the end there. That's kind of characterized his whole race, really, hasn't it, unfortunately?
And he's retired on the last lap, so he'll actually
has indeed
out those spots. He didn't finish.
No, indeed. So Wayne Hutchison is going to take the victory in the Hypercar Ram in the AMG 1. Congratulations to Wayne Hutchison. That's his first win in Hypercar Ram this season. Terrific drive in the AMG 1. The car just looked so planted for the majority of the race. He must be absolutely exhausted. Well done to Wayne Hutchison. Fourth overall as well. He can be very happy with that. And in the GT categories, well, there goes John Uyan over the line. He's had a crazy one, hasn't he? And the victory goes the way of Barker in the GT category, ahead of Angelidis. And in third place again, Ahmed Abdallah, the man who just doesn't need to qualify. He could charge his way through.
Yeah, great run from Abdallah through the GT Pro Field. Our, for whatever reason, participation lacking GT Pro Field today, as Boyce, I believe, is going to be our last runner. Not last overall, to be clear, the last to cross the line, because he was ahead of Ramos, as Ramos pipped triggered the end of the race.
Well, what a fantastic race battle it's been again here at Sebring. Can we just do every round of the championship at Sebring? Can we have a VWSC Sebring Cup? That would be amazing. Oh, fantastic. And there is your race winner, Wouter de Bruin, in the Pagani Imola, in front of Gilles Lalonde and Brian Hall. Jason Whitehead in fourth, ahead of John Uyan and Mikel Ramos from Ben Borman, the fastest driver of the day, and Ernest Bernaldo. Norm Graf eventually had to retire from the race in the Ferrari FXXK Evo. This is obviously in the Hypercar Pro category that we are looking at the results. In the Hypercar AM category, it would be a very different story, but what a victory for Wayne Hutchison in the Mercedes AMG 1 from Jerry Chen in the Flying Kiwi Lamborghini. Ross Smith ahead of Eric Moyne. Oh, sorry, Ross Smith is showing up as a DNF there, so Eric Moyne should be there in third position. Then Guillaume Benchka and AJ Wren. We also lost Brad Nielsen Vestager in the Glickenhaus after his big incident halfway through the race. And Tom Aiken, unfortunately, in the Shed Lamborghini, was out on lap 1. In the GT category, you said it already, Troy, they were lacking in GT Pro drivers, but Cameron Barker managed to keep hold of things in the pedigree BMW pretty much unsighted in the race from George Angelidis, and a great recovery from Ahmed Abdallah to finish third in front of John Mayer. And then in the GTM category, it was Tom Lane all the way from Matt Boyce, who was not quite able to overhaul him in the end. Peter Mayer kept himself out of trouble for the best part in front of third place. Eugene Mazur is in P4 from Stephen Miller, Barry DeMarzo, Craig Dans, who kept himself very entertaining in the midfield, Ed Jones in the McLaren from Mike Boyce in the Trash Panda Lamborghini, and Tony Boyton, who was only 2 laps away from the lead battle. Jamie Zalechki in front of James Balders, Dan Minguez and Filippo Marazzi, Luca Viani, Steve Carman, and Roland Hagenars, the final 6 cars in the list there, unable to finish the race distance. Well, what a result. Wouter de Bruin from Gilles Lalonde and a bitterly frustrated Brian Hall. You've got to say, Troy, that's a race that Brian Hall could easily have won and Wouter de Bruin could easily have lost.
Yeah, the seesaw at the end there with De Bruin getting his penalty, giving the lead to Hall, and then Hall needing the splash, but De Bruin not. I mean, it seesawed like crazy just on penalties and strategies. What an ending to the race.
Yep, and we've got a whole host of drivers to interview after that one. So let's bring in the Pagani Imola driver, Wouter de Bruin, after an absolutely exceptional race that had absolutely everything packed into it. Wouter, I mean, you have had some busy races in the VWSC, but that takes the absolute biscuit. I mean, you really had to work for that one.
Yeah, I had. It was a very tricky race here, and the car really helped me, but I'm glad I came out on top.
So there were moments in that race where I genuinely thought that just because the car was fast, it didn't mean it was actually going to give you the positions you needed. There were all sorts of problems. You had a penalty to take in the middle of the race. You had back markers tripping over you. There was so much work to do. I mean, how did you keep a lid on everything?
Yeah, at the end, I knew that Brian Hall was probably not making it on fuel. He might have to fuel save a lot to make it. So when I got the penalty, I still thought I'm still within a chance to win this, and I just don't need to make a mistake myself. So yeah, I just tried to keep it on the island, and luckily he still had to pit. So that gave me the win.
And how special is that one, considering how competitive it was here today, how tricky the conditions were, just how much of a victory in terms of the battle for the championship as well. This one is a really important result.
Yeah, when it's a wet race, it's very tricky. It's very easy to make a mistake and getting damage and having to pit. Well, as you saw, I got hit by another car, so that can also it's also quicker to happen in such a race. And I think you saw today that some of the competitors that are usually up front, I saw they were left down all of a sudden. So yeah, I just try to approach it like don't make any mistakes. I did a couple, but I guess some others were even more unlucky.
An amazing drive, I have to say, Wouter. Really exciting to watch. Troy, do you have any questions for our race winner?
Mr. De Bruin, back-to-back winner. Now, with the rain and the Pagani and everything, did that surprise you that you let out in front? Because if I looked at the practice times leading into the weekend, the Pagani wasn't in the top 3, if I'm not mistaken. So did it surprise you with the rain and everything that you were able to pace everybody?
Kinda, yeah. Like I knew this car would probably be good in the rain, but indeed I did not expect to have the pace in the dry weather. So yeah, during qualifying was like the first time you really compete against the other drivers in the rain. And when I saw I was P1, I thought, oh, this is going pretty good.
Fantastic. What a great result and what a great victory. Wouter de Bruin in the Pagani Imola, the winner of the 2022 Sebring 1.2. Great job, buddy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, let's catch up with our race winner in the GT category. Cameron Barker, pretty much to his own devices throughout the majority of the race there, but obviously staying out of trouble on the best part. That was a very difficult race to win, Cameron. What a performance. A great drive there in the BMW all the way through, smooth as a whistle. It certainly didn't look particularly easy out there. I'll bet it wasn't.
No. Changeable conditions, and it's the first wet race I've been in, but thanks for the congratulations.
I mean, it looked really, really treacherous in the mid part of the race because not only did you have some really competitive drivers, although not many in GT Pro to go against, but the competition when the drivers are there is incredibly ferocious. It just looked like you had to trip on eggshells to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate this week. Other people doing VEC, but George is really quick and just, pretty much make sure you don't make mistakes because, if you do, one of us is going to punish each other.
And of course, it's very easy when you have got absentees to just kind of go, well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be easy to take the win, but it's Sebring and it's obviously in the rain. So this must have been a really difficult race to strew together.
I think the it was the midpoint of the race where you're switching onto slicks and you've got to make sure you keep that position. I think was a main point. I think towards the end of the race, I don't know if it was picked up on stream, but George was really closing me down. And then I was having to heavily fuel save. If he'd caught up, I think he would have passed me.
So you were actually on slicks at the end of the race there. My goodness.
I think a few of us were. I don't know how many, but that dry line was there. But I think a couple of occasions, if you move just off it, it catches you out. I was in the wall at one point.
That's astonishing. I mean, to be able to have, that tight a racing line to play with, going into the next round of the championship, obviously, that's a good result. It's good points, but how does that change things in terms of your plan and focus and objectives for the rest of the year?
So I think finishing third with a couple of the guys from VEC in this series, I don't think I'm going to be able to challenge them, the two up front. But looking for third and fourth throughout the season, and then I think George is kind of my benchmark to fight against, especially after these first couple of races I've been in. It's definitely been him that I've been fighting with towards the end of races.
Fair point. Very good performance. Troy, anything from you on this one?
Yeah, anything that was surprising about the conditions, and had you done wet weather testing before today?
Not before today, because I'd only been running on the server and it's been dry up until this morning. So it was definitely interesting. Tried to qualify on slicks, which was a mistake. Put me back 4 places. In terms of interesting, it's just that once the train tracks came on during that second stint, just keeping on them, just focusing. It was a really difficult race to make sure you didn't make those mistakes.
Amazing. It was a really, really solid drive, Cameron, really smooth, and you should be congratulated. Good job.
Thank you very much.
So let's see if we can grab a word with Tom Lane. Hopefully we can get the final word with Wayne Hutchison as well, but I notice he hasn't been able to make his way to the booth waiting room yet. So let's catch up with Tom Lane. Tom, crazy race. Absolutely flotsam and jetsam everywhere you looked. But I tell you what, you really made that one look pretty easy. I'm assuming that was one of the toughest races of your life.
Yeah, I don't really do rain, so pretty much my first 2-hour practice session.
So, Tom, you're a little bit faint. Hopefully you can bring us a little bit more volume on that one, but I'll give you a chance to do that as I ask my next question. The pit stop phase was obviously very tricky for a lot of the drivers in the field there. I'm assuming that you were basically running on the ragged edge in terms of fuel economy and obviously tire life because it was drying out quickly. We heard from Cameron Barker that obviously they were on the dries at the end of the race. Did you feel the confidence in the car to be able to do the same thing?
No, I kept a single set of wets throughout the whole thing. I just couldn't see any dry line through the final turn or T1, so I didn't trust it.
That's better. We can hear you a little bit more now, which is good. So obviously with so many drivers around you, there was flotsam and jetsam all over the place. I'm assuming you didn't quite manage to keep it a completely clean race either, because I don't think anybody did.
Well, I didn't actually go off the track at any point, but I had
wow, that's impressive.
I had a bit of a moment on lap 2 where I bounced over a curb and took some damage on the front, but that's about it.
Do you know, if the worst thing you could say from a race like that one is that you hopped over a curb, I mean, that's incredibly impressive. Troy and I are sitting there thinking, we couldn't think of a single driver that had stayed out of trouble. Well, we know one now. It was Tom Lane. Tom, what does this mean now in terms of the objectives and focus for the championship moving forward? That's a big result and a big nod of confidence for you. Does that kind of accelerate things a little bit in terms of what you think you can achieve through the year?
Yeah, a bit. Well, it's my first year, and I just sort of thought I'd try and finish a few races. But last time I checked the championship, I seemed to be near at the top, so I might have a go at it.
May as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now we know you can win. Troy, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great way of analyzing it. Tom, did anything surprise you going into this? Obviously, the rain probably surprised everybody. And if it wasn't the rain, did anything surprise you? And if it was the rain, had you done any wet weather testing before today?
I'd done a little bit, but I hadn't really considered it. I sort of forgot about the plugin, about how it works. So, but no, I just sort of got my setup done a few days in advance and tried to keep it clean.
I tell you what, Tom, whatever you had for breakfast this morning, send me a crate of it because I want to drive like that. Genuinely. That's
great drive. Great
amazing. Congratulations, Tom. Great victory and well done. Hopefully there's more of those in the bag this year. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, what a race the Sebring 1.2 hours has been. We've had some sensational battles out there. VWSC delivers again, Troy, and we get to do it all again in the coming weeks as the championship moves on into April. And I'm going to miss Sebring, actually. It's been the best 8 days of the esports racing commentary I could have asked for.
It's been pretty crazy, hasn't it? We'll bring up the schedule here. We go to Long Beach next time, which isn't going to have its shortage of moments either, I would imagine, with 30, 35 plus cars trying to circumnavigate Long Beach, of all places, for the VWSC to hit
Yeah.
up.
How much of a pinball are half of these cars going to be through the course of
Right.
racing when they bounce off the wall?
I mean, and I don't think we're hitting the 91s at Long Beach throughout the season, but so yeah, the pinball effect and the tight walls and the fountain bend around Long Beach. I mean, this is going to be a little bit crazy, a little bit ahead of ourselves, though. I am going to miss Sebring as well, because now it feels like between the 91 Sebring and the 2022 Sebring we had today, we've legitimately kicked off the season. We know our key players. We've gotten some race winners in. And I mean, the entertainment factor has just been top notch.
Indeed it has. Thank you, Troy Uyan. It's always a pleasure to be in the box with you. I can't wait for Long Beach. You can see the schedule on your screen, folks. April the 2nd, make sure you put it in your diaries. April 16th for Suzuka and 23rd for the 1 hour of Spa as well. The VWSC from Champions Motorsport Racing continues to deliver in great action and spades. We are really excited about... Oh, hang on a minute. Just before we go, I noticed in the booth waiting room, let's get a word with my driver of the day. Let's get a word with Gilles Lalonde. If we can bring him in just before we wrap up, it would be great to hear from Gilles Lalonde. I said in the broadcast he was my driver of the day. So Gilles, congratulations. Formidable, mon brave. Absolutely amazing. And what a drive to second position. Talk us through it. It must have been pretty tricky out there. Oh, no, it does. It seems as though the microphone may not be working for Gilles Lalonde after all. Apologies for that. Oh, there it is.
Yep, I'm sorry for that. The car was bouncing off a lot. I had to wait a bunch of times. So a bit. Since I had to wait, I wasn't trying too hard. That was one. And the second is I took slicks at the pit in the middle of the race, and I went from 7th to 2nd.
I mean, you must have found a lot of confidence in the car on slick tires. What is it about the Valkyrie that just gives you that dependence in the mechanical grip of the corners? Is it just well balanced, or do you just find that your driving style seems to suit it?
I just played and played and played with the setup, and at the end, I was using more and more downforce, and the more downforce I put in, the more stable it got. So I ended up with a setup that was stable enough that I could apply a lot of power, and it was tracking out, so I didn't go off.
So with all that downforce applied, did you find that it was actually able to sort of countermand the understeer and the wheel spin, or did you find that you had to use the setup that you'd adjusted with the downforce to kind of work symbiotically against it?
I have a lot of rake in the car, so there's a lot of weight at the front, dynamic and static, and so I had front end all the way through. So it was a question of being able to apply coming out of the corners, and the more wing I put in the back, the more it would track out. So that was weird, because in the first few races I never did that, and I didn't do well.
Well, a setup masterclass then. Troy, you must have one or two things to throw Gilles Lalonde's way.
Yes, Mr. Lalonde. Amazing drive.
And
so when in the middle of the race and you're trying to make that gamble, A, did the rain in itself surprise you? Had you done wet weather testing before this? And B, going into that middle of the race where you're making that decision to go slicks, how confident were you in that decision? And it clearly paid off.
In the HUD where you set which tires you want, I changed it 4 times in the lap.
Really?
Yeah, in the few laps just before that. Okay, I'm going to take rain. And 2-3 corners later, dry. 2-3 corners later, I'm going to put rain. And at a certain point, it ended up.
Oh my goodness!
I love you. I don't love you. I love you. I don't love you. I ended up going into the pit with slick tires on, and it was a gamble, because I didn't know what it was going to do. A few times I went off the line, and when I was off the line, I was just like, I'm going to crash. But it's okay. I bounced only once off one wall on the last corner. Apart from that, I kept it clean.
I tell you what, Troy, we should never ever give Gilles Lalonde a dandelion or a daisy because there won't be any petals left on it. The amount of decisions he's trying to work his way through. Gilles, epic drive, wonderful
you.
result, and great to see you in P2. Epic, well done.
Thank you, and thank you to you two guys. It's always fun to watch to listen to you.
Hey,
nice
it's
day.
a privilege. It's an absolute privilege. I mean, it's VWSC, and the racing's been fantastic from the start of the season. We've enjoyed it, and we're just going to keep on going. Thank you.
Cool. Have a nice day, guys.
So you can see the schedule on your screen. Obviously, we're going to have the 1 hour, of Long Beach on April the 2nd. That's coming up next in the schedule. You've got a few weeks preparation. If you want to get involved and get in the game as well, you can obviously do so at cmsracing.com. It'll be great to have your involvement and your inclusion in the world of VWSC and, of course, all the other leagues that take place within CMS Racing. A massive thank you to Storm Game Simulations and everybody who has put things together. To my colleague Troy Uyan, from myself, Jake Sanson, you have enjoyed 1.2 hours of Sebring, and I can't wait for the next one on April the 2nd at Long Beach. See you soon.